That's perfect. Officially, I would like to welcome every one of you folks to our Generative AI Specialization program, the course demo. Awesome. Here is a program where you can able to dive deep and understand what's the Gen AI capabilities and how you can able to transform your career into AI, right? I'm going to dip you guys into the world of AI for the next 2 hours. So just make a two, I mean, just make sure you make a one single promise here. Please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. I will tell you what. So the 2 hours of your time and investment could able to transform, it could able to lead your life into an exciting career opportunities in the future. So please make sure you don't miss this particular opportunity. Please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. And if you want to enjoy an awesome demo on top of the leading cloud platforms that we do have, so please make sure you stay till end of this particular program. Obviously there is a visual treat in this particular program, so and you can able to download the free premium ebooks if you stay till only end of this particular program. We'll be sharing a links at end of this session. Okay, so let's get started quickly. So let me just turn on my camera. I don't know whether you folks could able to see me. Yeah, here we go. Hey folks, yes, this is Sarath. So I'm a trainer for this particular program, and I'm one of a founder and CEO of Psitron Technologies. What we do, you can learn more about us. Just go ahead and Google for www.citrontech.com. So let's talk about anything related to the cloud, AI, MLOps, data science, Gen AI. We're the best peoples outside. So go ahead and check. I mean, so we are into multiple stuff. We are into corporate training. So we do train the corporates. We work with bank like so Royal Bank of Scotland. It can be Minion Labs in Bangalore or a few other organizations in UK. And we are also into the retail training. So obviously, I don't want to get you bored talking about us. You can learn more about us later. And what we are here for, obviously, let's get started with a visual treat. Let's get started with understanding what is the Gen AI and what it could able to offer for you. So let's get started. I'm going to turn off my camera. So I mean, so let's say I have trained more than 5,000 plus working professionals like you who want to make their career into AI, right? So obviously AI is not the next big thing. It's a thing right now, right? And again, AI is going to be everywhere, and AI is trying to reach every corner of this world. There's no doubt about it, right? So saying that, let's get started. Okay, here we go. Okay, the highlights of this particular demo session. Okay, so these are the three important points that we will be revolving around for this next 2 hours. Okay, so what exactly we will be doing here? So we'll be learning what is exactly the generative AI is all about and how you can able to master this generative AI. I'm talking about you can able to master and how you can able to lead the Gen AI world. So then comes the career opportunities. How does the career opportunities looks like in terms of Gen AI after you upskilling, right? So let's get started. Here we go. So without wasting a much of a time, okay, so I just want to get started with this beautiful picture. Okay, so here we go. So what are the session that we conduct in terms of AI? It's a ritual that we get started with this particular picture. Okay. Okay. So here is a task for you. Yes, it's going to be more interactive. This is what exactly I want you folks to do. Go ahead and observe this particular picture. I mean, take 10 seconds, observe this particular picture. Use your chat window. Try to describe what is this picture is about. That's all what you need to do. So go ahead and use your chat window and try to describe what is this picture could be, what you could able to recognize from this picture. Let's see what answers you can able to give me. Go ahead, do that. So what do you think this picture is about, right? Okay, so here we have Arsif Shahik is saying a relaxing mode. What an awesome description, isn't it? Obviously, I would like to go ahead and relax in this such kind of a park. Maybe I would like to work here for the entire day. Why not, right? Awesome. That's an awesome description. And here we go. The commands are pouring in. Chandrasekhar says it's a dog show. That's awesome. Yes. Pranjali says it's a dog show. Perfect. Yes. And Vishnu, says it's a lot of people's hanging out with the dogs. What an awesome description, right? So obviously, we know this is a beautiful picture of the park, right? Obviously, we can see this could be the place where we want to spend an entire day, obviously. So, and we can see a lot of trees outside, and we can see a lot of dogs. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. And not just a dog, we can see a different breeds of a dog, isn't it? I can see a dog which is carrying a ball in his mouth. A more detailed description I will give you. Okay, so, and you can see different breeds of dogs, and I can see a path where I can walk. I can see a men. Yep. So wearing a cool sunglasses. What on? Yeah, good. So then we can see a men and women. Yes, we can describe. So we can able to describe it, right? We do understand there's a picture of a park. Yeah, we know there's a picture of a park. What is that for you? How is that is related to what we're talking about generative AI? Okay, my question is different. My question is not what is this picture is about. Let's try to reiterate ourselves. So, and let's say this is what exactly I want you to ask. This is my original question. So, how do you know this is a picture of a park? So, who taught you this is how the park looks like? Who taught you this is a dog? How do you know this is a dog? And how do you know this is a bunch of trees? And how do you know this is a path where you can walk? Is a bench where you can sit? This is a men. How do you know it, first of all? So yeah, that's a question. Okay, so now obviously here we have Naidu says in the chat window, folks, trained from a childhood. Good answer. That's an awesome answer. Let's say let's go to the next slide. Okay, let's reiterate this. Okay, so what if I go ahead and I will be going ahead and I will be displaying the same exact picture to this newborn baby. Okay, so do you think this baby could able to recognize whatever you could able to recognize right now? Could baby could able to recognize? Okay, there's a picture of a park. That's a dog which is carrying a ball in his mouth. That there are trees. Blah blah blah. No, right? Probably a newborn baby less than 1 year old could able to barely recognize his mother and father. But apart from that, a baby doesn't know anything else, right? But what if, yes, if I go ahead and display the same picture to this maybe a grown up kid, maybe he's going for a play school, or maybe a primary school or something like that. So yes, a kid could able to describe this picture. Maybe he can say, okay, there's a picture of a park where I can go ahead and play with my friends with my ball, with a cricket ball and bat, and I can bring my dog. So that's what exactly he can say, right? But what if I go ahead and display the same exact picture, maybe a grown-up adult, someone who is like you, right? So that's what exactly you're doing. So let's say he can able to give a more in detail description. Okay, you can see this is a picture of a park. Looks like it's a morning hours where people are spending a time and people are enjoying with their pets and with their friends or family, right? He can give a more a detailed description, right? Okay, still, I didn't get the point, you might say. Sharad, what is this about? So we are talking about generative AI. So why we are discussing about this? Okay, so we are discussing about ourselves, right? So let's say what we today talk about AI, artificial intelligence, right? So we're the best examples. So we are the best examples of what we talk about AI today, right? So we are the biological machines at the end of the day. Consider that a newborn baby, a born with an empty brain. Practically, it's not an empty brain. You might have your own genes in it, but yeah, let's talk about doesn't have any information of a real world. But yeah, what happens? So we are the best examples of AI. So AI learns the data. Similar to that, let's say we learn the data in many different ways. We start learning from our kids, from your parents, recognizing people's, making friends, going to the school, learning physics, biology, maths, science, social science, whatever it is, right? So eventually grow up and you learn things and learn things, you eventually get better in that, right? So a kid is much better than a grown-up adult, and a grown-up adult is much better than, maybe let's say we are talking about a person who is more than 50 years old. Like, I mean, let's say if you put growth cycle of a human being, let's say the knowledge that you learn, it's exponentially grows up, right? So finally we expire, but that's not that's a different topic for the different program. But like obviously what we're talking about, you eventually you keep on learning, you get better in that, and you can able to make a decision for your own future. You can able to predict what's going to happen next. And let me tell you, the one good decision or a prediction that you made today, let me tell you what, attending this session. Yes, you made a decision to attend this particular session, believing that Sharath, which is me, a trainer who is going to deliver a valuable content for you, which can able to help you to lead the AI race, right? To be a part of an AI industry. Obviously, that's a decision. Yep, saying that, so as we discussed, we are the best examples of AI, right? So what today human beings are trying to do, we are trying to replicate ourselves, isn't it? Yes, that's what exactly we are trying to do. So what are the data that we could able to learn, the way we could able to make a decision, the way we could able to make predictions. We want to teach the same exact data to this dumb machines. Yes, at the end of this, these machines could able to understand zeros or ones, right? So we started teaching the same exact data to these machines, right? So consider that as a human beings, right? So we consume a data in many different ways. You can go ahead and list it if you know what are the different ways we consume a data. Okay, let me just tell you. Yes, we consume a data through our human eyes, right? So we can able to visually see the things. You are actually consuming a data right now in front of your eyes. You're observing my slides, right? And still you're consuming a data in another way. You're hearing my audio, you're hearing my words, right? So you could able to still consume a data through a sense. I mean, touching things. You can able to consume a data through smelling, right? Isn't it? We can smell the biryani and we know what kind of a biryani it is. It's that classic Hyderabad biryani, whether it's a Delhi biryani, whatever it is, right? So, but the example is, as a human beings, we consume a data in many different types. Our eyes, through visuals, through audio, through a nose, by smelling things. Similarly, a machine could able to consume a data in many different ways, right? So consider that maybe I have a text document. I want to teach this text document to this machine. Or I could have a pictures. It can be JPG. It can be a PNG picture. So, I mean, it can be a picture that I'm talking about, right? So, or it can be any JSON document, right? It's a structured, maybe a document that we're talking about. So, similarly, a machine can also consume a data in many different ways, right? So we are trying to teach the same data, whatever we learned, right? So let's get a simple example here, okay? So consider that I will take a simple example here. So maybe I will go ahead and grab some CSV file, okay? Simple example. Let's say this CSV file has some data. Let's talk about, okay, I put some sensors in your home. Maybe I collected the amount of electricity that you consume for last 3 years. So that means I have around 30,000 data points. I mean, in the CSV file, I have 30,000 rows in it. So my goal is pretty much simple. I want to take this bunch of data. I want to teach this data to a machine. So what we call it as machine learning at the end of the day, right? So what happens? This machine learns the data. Just imagine it's a 3 years of your electricity consumption of your home. So obviously it machines tries to understand the pattern from the data, which is nothing but it tries to understand how does your electricity consumption would look like in summer, how does it looks like in winter, or it can be in a monsoon, right? It tries to understand and it creates something called a machine learning model, which will be a part of final end product, we can say. And once we have this machine learning model, we can ask this model to make some decisions or predictions, right? So maybe I can ask this machine learning model. I will throw a simple example. So I want to understand what will be my electricity bills going to looks like for the next 6 months. So obviously, it's a model that can able to help you to understand what your bills, a future bills is going to look like, right? It's going to say, okay, your first month bill is going to look like this, second month, and 6 months, right? It can do a simple forecast, right? Okay, let's throw this example. Let's say I will take a bunch of documents, maybe I will take a bunch of documents. It can be your books, articles, blogs, whatever it is, whatever the data that we have on the internet, right? So I go ahead and teach all this data to a machine, right? Which we're talking about a large data that's available on internet. So at the end of the day, then it produces something called large language models. For a reason, yes, that's why we call it as large language models, because this large language models are trained on top of a huge amount of data. Just imagine OpenAI, you know that ChatGPT, they might have scrapped the complete internet. They might have just scrapped the entire Wikipedia. They might have scrapped the entire blogs, GitHub, books that's available in the world. They taught the entire data to that machine. Then it produces something called large language models. And now you have this large language model. You know what you can do with that. You can ask this model to generate some text. Maybe you can input a text. You can ask it to write a beautiful bedtime story for your kid. Maybe you can ask to write maybe a convincing a love letter for your girlfriend. Who knows, right? Or you can ask this large language model to write a code, right? So, let's say we are talking about this is about a text, but now let's say I want to take a bunch of pictures of a cat and I want to take a bunch of pictures of a dogs. I'm taking a picture. Okay, I want to teach the difference between a cat and a dog, right? So what we're calling it as computer vision, anything that we can able to do with images and videos. So what happens, a machine tries to understand the difference between a cat and a dog. Okay, so then again it produces a machine learning model. Okay, see what happens next. I will be putting a camera in front of my a model, and then I will be putting a cat in front of my camera. Okay, this is a cat. Yes, that's a cat. Yeah, for our understanding for now. So consider that this is a cat. So now once the cat comes in front of a camera, okay, the model says, okay, there's a cat which is standing in front of a camera, right? So it could able to recognize a cat. It could able to differentiate between a dog and a cat. So what we call it as computer vision, right? So this is an example of what we're talking about AI. And today we are here to understand something called generative AI. So what is this? Gen AI, because still the question is unanswered. Let's try to explore that further. So let's step into the next step here. Okay. Now let's try to understand the evolution and architecture of this generative AI. So where we are standing today is a world of generative AI. So let's try to understand that. Let me have some water before that. Perfect. So let's get started. So obviously, let's say we are talking about evolution, which is starting from 1956. AI, it can be our machine learning, what we're talking about, our deep learning that we're talking about, or today what we're talking about, generative AI. So we are talking about an origin. So where it started and where we are today, right? So let's try to understand. So let's try to understand from many years of research in AI. So what does this scientist has does? The scientist has developed a new type of a model. They call it as transformers. Yes, I'm not talking about a transformer movie, which is an Hollywood movie. No, I'm not talking about such kind of a transformers. So we're talking about a transformer. It's a, such kind of a deep learning model, right? So that solves a bigger problem with older I mean AI models like RNNs. See what happens. This older models actually struggled to process a long piece of text. So, but transformers, what they can do, they can able to handle a much larger input. Comparing with the legacy models, they really felt difficult with processing a huge amount of a text. So that's where the origin of transformers comes into the picture. So just imagine Google is the basically the found. I mean, they are the origin of company which produces this transformers. Actually, a transformers is a kind of a machine learning models which can able to process a large amount of a text. Okay, let's just simply put it in our brain for that, for a reason. So the key reason the transformers works well is because of something we call it as attention mechanism. So basically this allows the models to focus on the most important words in a sentence. So no matter where they appear actually in a sentence, right? So instead of reading a text one word at a time, in order let's say like older models, like which is older models reads one word at a time. But what transformers could able to do it, right? Transformers can look at everything at a time and decide which part matters the most. So old models can read one word at a time. Just imagine you might have a big PDF with word of with PDF of maybe 10 pages. How many words you might have, right? Old models could able to read one word at a time. Just imagine transformers could able to grab the entire document. It could able to understand what's there in that document, right? So most modern models basically that we are talking about, which can able to generate a text, which we call it as large language models, where we call it as LLMs, so are actually built on top of this transformers. Transformers are something which can able to understand the complete words at a time. So these models are basically trained, as I mentioned, on a massive amount of a data. See, I'm talking about not a one document or a two document. Just imagine organizations like OpenAI, or let's say we are talking about Meta, which has their own large language models, or let's say we are talking about AWS or maybe Anthropic, right? They have their own large language models today. These organizations, they have such kind of an investment and they have such kind of an infrastructure. Just imagine if you want to scrap the complete data in the internet, how much money you need, how much infrastructure you need. They have that. Obviously, they are the people who built what we call it as large language models. They have scrapped the complete internet. It can be books, articles, websites that you have. So as a result, they learn how large language models works and can generate a response that sounds natural and even creative, right? So in a simple terms, LLMs could able to read a lot of text and learns a pattern from that and then uses that knowledge to understand and responds like a human like a way, right? You know what you can do today with large language models. One example that you might have learned, chat gpt, right? So here we are not here to understand how to use chat gpt. This is not a program where you can learn how to use chat gpt. So using a chat gpt is all about you being a consumer of an AI. No, I don't want you folks to be a consumer of an AI. Rather than that, I want you to be a creators of that AI. So how do you create such kind of an applications by yourself, and it can solve such kind of a problems to a huge organizations, right? That's where we are here to understand. So let's get started. Let us try to understand what is this generative AI is all about, right? But I'm talking about something called LLMs, right? I'm talking about something called LLMs. Okay, now I'm talking about something called generative AI. There's a confusion between what is this LLMs and what is this generative AI. Is that a different thing? No, definitely not. Let's try to understand that. So when I'm talking about generative AI, let's try to understand the meaning behind the word generative. That means it can generate something. What do you mean by that? So generative AI basically refers to the AI systems which can create a new content, a content which never exists, right? So rather than, let's say, for example, just analyzing existing data, this includes generating a new text. It can be a generative AI is an again example of generating a new images, generating a new audio, or even a video for an example. So these models learn obviously from the vast amount of data. So consider that we can bring everything today that we're talking about large language models, which can able to generate a text for you. We're talking about image generation models like DALI 3 or a lot of other AI tools that's available in the market, right? Which can generate a picture. If you input a text, it can generate a image for an example. Let's go to the black screen. Okay. So let me just bring everything in an umbrella of generative AI. So consider that we are talking about text to text. That means if you input a text, it will generate a text. Example is what ChatGPT could able to do. So obviously ChatGPT today can do more than one thing. It can also generate a pictures. That is something called multi-models. We'll discuss that. But now let us talk about large language models. If you input a text, it can generate a text. You can go ahead and ask a ChatGPT to go ahead and write a bedtime story. It can write a story, a text, right? Or let's say there are models which you can input a text and you can generate an image. And there is a models which you can able to input a text which can generate a video for an example, right? So you can able to input a text and it can able to generate maybe an audio for you, right? So we can bring everything into the radar of generative AI. So what is generative AI? As the name represents, this kind of AI tools could generate a new content, a content which never exists, right? It adds a creativity, right? So if you ask large language models to generate a story, to create a bedtime story, it creates a story. It has a capability to create a story which never exists in this world because it has a creative parameters in it. It can generate that creative story, or it can generate a picture that never exists. You can ask to generate a picture of a man. Obviously, it will generate a realistic picture of a man which never exists in this world. Yes. So that's what exactly the generative AI is all about. And wherein we discussed about large language models, they are specialized in processing and generating a text. So these models are trained on, again, huge amount of text data, right? But generative AI models are vast. I mean, they are trained on text data, image data. It can be any other video data that is available in the internet, etc. Right. So if I want to give some examples, let's say you might have heard about something called Mid Journey for an example of image generation tool, or let's say we're talking about DALI 3. We will talk about various different examples. But there is something called foundation models. We understand what is generative AI is, large language models are. What is this foundation models anyway? So foundation models, they are the foundation, obviously. So foundation models, we can say they are general purpose AI models that serves as a base for various applications. So I mean, they can be fine tuned for a special task. Let's say you want to create your own chatbot for your organization. Maybe you want to create a medical diagnostic application. You want to create a coding assistant AI tool, right? So here you can use an existing foundation models. Let's say it can be GPT 3.5, which is actually used to create what we call it as chat gpt today. So consider that chat gpt is a final end product, right? It's not a model. Chat gpt is an application. It's a chat based application. And you know that chat gpt can do more than one thing, right? It can generate a text, it can generate a code, it can solve your problems, it can do some math. But let's say organization like OpenAI, they have used GPT 3.5, they fine tuned that to build a chat gpt application. We'll understand much in detail once we getting inside for the slides. And there is something called overlap here. So consider that we are talking about large language models, we are talking about gen AI, right? So large language models are what we're talking about today. They are kind of a foundation models, but not all the foundation models are large language models. So you can have a foundation model which can able to generate a picture. You can have a foundation model which you can generate an audio or video. See, foundation models are bases. Let's say you take that foundation model, you optimize it accordingly for an application that you want to develop. So consider that you have a stone and you give the stone for the sculpture and he can able to design, I mean, he can convert a stone into a beautiful statue. Maybe you want a statue of a dog. That's your use case. Maybe there is a stone and you want a sculpture to design it. Maybe you would like you are looking for maybe a sculpture of a cat. Maybe that's your use case, right? So foundation models are like a stones and you optimize it accordingly so you can convert that for your own business use cases. Okay, let's try to understand more in detail. So now let us try to understand how does this LLMs really works, right? Let's get started. So when we're talking about large language models, it can be large language models like OpenAI, GPT, or Anthropic Claude, and anything that we're talking about. So they are actually work through a few important steps. I mean, the first step, what happens? They break down the text into smaller pieces, what we call it as tokens, because at the end of the day, large language models works on a text. They take, I mean, we input a text, that text will be break down into smaller pieces. We call it as tokens. Just remember this tokens, which can be some kind of a numbers, because at the end of the day, this machines can able to understand numbers, right? It cannot understand pictures. It cannot understand your text. It can just understands numbers. It can be 0 or 1 for an example, right? So then what happens, we convert these numbers into what we call it as tokens, that's models can have numbers which can models can able to understand. So then what happens, this model predicts next token based on the input it has received. So adding each new token to the sequence at one time. So basically what we can able to do to make this predictions, the model uses a probability in order to choose the model's likely and next token. It also adds a bit of randomness. We call it as a creativity, basically, to make the response more creative and less repetitive, for an example. Simple, in a words, we input a text. This text will be break down into smaller chunks, what we call it as, let's say, smaller pieces. We call it as tokens. So here is a best example of tokens. So consider that we have a text input, which we call it as hello AI world. This hello AI world has been converted into a numbers, because at the end of the day, so you can see 9906 in AI world. I mean, for a machine, 9906 is nothing but hello. And let's say if you take 15592 for a AI, it is AI, basically the word. So then comes the word world is being represented as 1917. So that's the AI understands, if the word says world, it understands the numbers 1917. That's the AI says it's a word world, actually, right? So that's how the machine understands it at the end of the day. So when it comes to these large language models, there are two things that we need to understand. There is one thing called encoder and decoder. So I mean, see what happens, this encoder and decoder are a core components that is used by this transformer architecture. We discussed about transformers to process and generate a text. Here is a simple explanation of each and everything. Let's start with what we call it as an encoder here. So basically an encoder processes the input text and converts that into meaningful representation. So that means what we're talking about, the numbers that captures the context and relationship between the words. So it mainly used for a tasks like, when we're talking about encoder, let's say it can be a text classification use cases, a sentiment analysis, or understanding the input text. So an encoder basically consists of multiple layers, we can say, that uses self attention mechanism to focus on important part of an input text and to create a context aware representation, actually, right? So wherein a decoder, for an example, right? So a decoder basically has a task that represents generated by the encoder. So what I'm trying to say, and generates an output text, a one token at a time. So basically it uses both the context from the encoder and the previously generated token to predict the next token. So the decoder is primarily used in a use cases like text generation, for an example. Let's say you want to generate a text. That's what exactly a chat GPT can able to do. Or let's say you want to do some language translation. You want to translate a Hindi to English or Tamil to English, or maybe you want to do complete the sentence, for an example, right? So that's where the encoder and decoder comes into the picture, basically. So encoder and decoder, it's all the game that plays with a number. So where your text is converted into numbers, and it machine analyzes it, and it tries to understand what's the next word that I want to give as an input for a customer. For an example, let's say you're asking, write a story about maybe a Cinderella, right? Let's say it's a very, a children's story that you might have heard about. Let's say you're asking AI to write a story about a Cinderella. Obviously, AI start generating each and every word. So the encoder and decoders that we're talking about plays a very important word, because how does AI decides what's the next word that I want to write in that paragraph, or the next word that I want to write in that particular line. So that's where encoders and decoders comes into the picture. So saying that, so now let us talk about different types of LLMs. Or let's say at the end of the day, let's talk about different types of generative AI tools that's outside in the market, because the use cases are everywhere. Because consider that when we're talking about world of generative AI, every organization is trying to integrate generative AI in their organization in multiple different ways. So consider that it can be a text generation models. Let's say we are talking about a GPT 3.5, Anthropic models, or it can be meta-based llama models, for an example. can be a best examples. Then comes image generation models. Let's say if you input your text, it can generate a picture basically, right? So it can be DALI 3, Mid Journey, or let's say Anthropic Claude, for an example, which we call it as multi-model, could also generate a picture, right? So then comes audio and speech recognition models. So consider that there is a model called Whisper, so which can, let's say, you can able to input your audio, which can then convert that into, let's say, a text, for an example. Or there are AI tools that's outside in the market which can able to generate a speech output. Okay, so we do understand a text generation models which generates a text, image generation model which generates an image, audio and speech recognition models would able to recognize a speech and it can generate a speech. But here is a twist. There is something called multi-modularity, which is nothing but today most of the organizations has what we call it as multi-modularity, which is nothing but a one model can do both the jobs together. Yes, a best model would be Anthropic Claude, right? So Anthropic is an organization, so where they have their own model called Claude, which can able to do a two job. It can generate a text as well as it can also generate a picture. A one model can do a two things, generating a text and images, which we call it as multi-modularity. Then comes we are talking about customizations, right? So obviously models can be tailored with your own specific data to enhance your own needs. For an example, let's say your company has your own use cases, how you can able to adapt this large language models or Gen AI models to work for your own organization. That's what exactly we're talking about, customization. Yeah, isn't it awesome? So now let us talk about foundation models versus large language models. Let's say we are talking about foundation models, or what we today calling it as LLMs. Let's discuss that. See, when I'm talking about these models, right, it can be foundation models that we're talking about. They are actually trained using what we call it as unsupervised or self-supervised learning techniques. So, which means they learn from unlabeled multi-model data without requiring any human annotations or labeling during the training process. So they are characterized by their large size and they are built on very deep neural networks, obviously, and trained on billions of parameters, because that's why they call it as large language models. So designed as a foundation models, they serve as a starting point for developing other models. So which can be a further customized and fine tuned to meet a specific requirements. So when I'm talking about foundation models, let's just talk in a very simple terms, okay? See, foundation models are trained on the huge amount of generic data that's available in the internet, right? So consider that if you go to internet, there are a lot of books, books related to stories, a book related to articles, it can be, or let's say we are talking about books related to technology, it can be coding, it can be related to storytelling, security, anything. Let's say we are talking about a generic data that's publicly available in the internet, for an example. So this organizations has took that particular data, they have trained a model and what they call it as a foundation models. This foundation models, believe me, they are always works outside the box. I mean, this foundation models, they can do more than one job. So if you want to use this foundation models to generate a story, let's say you want to ask it to write a story about a bedtime story, or maybe you want to ask this foundation models to write the code. Yes, it can do. You can ask this foundation model to do some basic mathematics. Yes, it can do. Yes, this foundation models works outside the box. But wherein the large language models that comes into the picture, this large language models are built on top of this foundation models. See, consider that you are into an organization. Let's say, for an example, you are into, let's say, health sector. Maybe let's say we're talking about health insurance sector, right? So consider that you want to build a large language model which is specific to answering the questions related to the policies, health insurances, related to your customers. But yes, this foundation models can do the job, but still, but you want to fine tune your own large language model. So consider that you have a foundation model. On top, you'll be feeding your own organization data. Let's say we're talking about health insurance data, and you'll be fine tuning that. A fine tuning is nothing but you're taking an existing trained model, you're teaching an additional data to it, and you'll be getting your own version of a model. Let's talk about what we're calling it as, let's say we are talking about text generation model. You'll be producing your own LLM. That means this LLM is optimized with your own health insurance data. But this foundation model works outside the box. Maybe it has a limited amount of data that's publicly available on internet, because we are talking about health insurance records, right? Let's talk about any health insurance companies like Policy Bazaar, right? It can be anything. Just imagine Policy Bazaar health insurance data is not publicly available. You might take different kind of health insurances, right? You might have a health insurance which covers 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs, 10 lakhs. But what are the different kind of diseases health insurance policy that you've taken as will cover, what will not covered? So those records mostly sometimes will not be available on top of public internet. But yes, this foundation model is aware about health insurance records limitedly, whatever that is available on internet. That's where maybe this kind of an organizations, they took their own data, they fine tune an existing large language model, existing foundation model with their own data, and they produce their own version of large language model which is fully optimized to answer your customer queries related to health insurances, for an example, right? So that's where it starts. You take your foundation models, you fine tune it accordingly, and then you can start working it for your own need. Let's throw a simple example here. So as I discussed, to better understand this concept, let's consider that you have a chat GPT 3.5 model, right? So the initial chat GPT is built using GPT 3.5, which is a foundation model. So what OpenAI as an organization, they might have enhanced this GPT 3.5 model by fine-tuning it for a chat focused. Consider that a chat GPT is a platform where you can able to chat with an AI, right? It's a chat interface. You need to convert an existing foundation model for a chat focused data. So, and then enabling this model to excel the conversation task like working like a chat bot, right? So consider that. We'll take another example here, as I mentioned. See, consider that maybe there is a health sector, as I mentioned. Maybe they have a data sources like they might be having a pharmaceutical data, and they might be having some data from their wearable sensors. So from then comes publications from the medical forums, and they might have an X-rays from the patients. They might have some video ultrasonic data. It can be ECG data or any kind of a medical data set. But consider that a foundation model can work outside the box because it has learned from publicly available generic data, but it doesn't have an access to your in-house business data. Right? That's where you take an existing data of your own organization. You take an existing foundation model. Okay, let's take Llama model that's available in the internet. It can be ChatGPT. It can be Anthropic Claude. They're all foundation models. You take and you teach an additional data to this foundation models. That means now these foundation models are aware about your own organization data. That means now this foundation models as more intelligence, it can solve any kind of a problem. So, and again, consider that your focus is adapting this foundation models to act as a maybe health sector chatbot. Maybe it want to answer a questions related to health sector. Maybe it can be related to maybe you have a doctor who want to maybe create a documents related to diagnostics or treatments, and maybe you want to create some kind of a chat interface where your customers can able to mention their symptoms. Maybe consider that you have a large language model where your customer goes and, okay, I have this symptom. Okay, I have lot of a loss in, I have a lot of I'm losing my weight. Maybe I have a lot of sweating. Maybe, like, let's say we go ahead and mention the symptoms with large language model. Maybe large language model says, okay, this symptoms corresponds to what, whether it's a heart attack, whether it's a diarrhea, whatever it is, right? So it suggests, okay, you need to go ahead and check with this specific doctor. So I mean, you're adapting a foundation model to work focused to the medical sector, for an example, right? Okay, saying this, we got it. What is a foundation model? And we take this foundation model, we adapt it with our own data to work better for our own organization needs. So saying that, now it's time. So now you have enough scenarios to consider where we can able to get started. Now let us get into the second point that we need to discuss. So what it takes to master this generative AI. Let's get started with an interesting discussion now. Okay, let's get into the very important part here. There are 4 approaches, right? The 4 approaches for an LLM to the production. So how you get any large language models into the production. So these are the strategies what every organizations should follow, and they are following it. So let's talk about this. What is this 4 approaches for an LLM to the production? See what happens. Enterprises are exploring this 4 different steps approaches. So what we're talking about to kickstart their LLM journey, right? So ranging from, let's say, easy and inexpensive to more complex or cost to deploy this large language models in the production. So consider that here is a scenario. So this is how the workflow would look like. So consider that here the first step would be prompt engineering. So then comes using what we call it as rack systems. We'll talk about it. Then comes fine tuning or training your own, let's say, custom foundation model. So yes, here we have an approach which is easy and cheap, and we do have a difficult and expensive, expensive task as well. So which one that your organization is looking forward, which specific a concept would definitely works for your organization, it does matters basically. So which approach you need to choose, right? How do you choose which approach does works for you? That's what exactly we need to make a decision here, right? So let's get started here with a prompt engineering for an example, right? So obviously there is something called prompt engineering, and some people they say that, okay, I'm using a chat GPT, I know how to do a prompting because I input the text to the chat GPT. So that's not exactly the prompting is. So prompting is all about giving a desired input to your large language model to get the expected output from it. So there is a techniques, there is a engineering behind creating this particular prompt basically. So now let us get started with the prompt engineering itself. Okay. So let's say when I'm talking about a prompt engineering, right? So many enterprises actually begin their journey. They have to begin their journey. They should not. Obviously, it is not a best approach. Okay, let me just go ahead and train my own foundation model from a scratch, or let me just go ahead and fine tune because I have my lot of data sitting in my organization, let me just go ahead and fine tune the model. No, it's not definitely the best approach. So they have to definitely experiment from the first. Let's get started with the prompt engineering now. So as I mentioned, a lot of organizations, they get started with their LLM journey using a cost efficient and time efficient approach by directly calling a third party AI providers, like through APIs. Like say I can go ahead and simply call OpenAI model, or it can be Anthropic Claude model through a prompt. Yes. So consider that we are talking about tools like Amazon Bedrock or OpenAI, or it can be Azure AI Foundry, all these cloud platforms. There are a lot of models already deployed behalf of you. All you can use, you can simply use APIs to simply call these models. That means you'll be using an APIs to call these models, and you'll be inputting a prompt and it will generate a desired output. You're not deploying the model, you're not fine tuning the model, you're using an existing model that's available in a internet or maybe in a cloud platforms. You're just checking that whether this existing models does works for your use cases or not. So I mean, most of the large language models that you see outside in a cloud platforms, OpenAI models, or it can be Anthropic models or Llama models, they work outside the box. But in most of the organizations, they don't need to fine tune their models, because if they have a desired prompt, and this could able to fetch the right output what they are looking forward, right? So obviously when I'm talking about however, what happens, this generalized large language models may not always provide the desired response unless the prompt is framed in a specific way, or guided with some additional directions as well, right? So this process, what we call it as a prompt engineering, that requires obviously creative writing skills and multiple iterations to ensure the best possible response that you get. It's all about trial and errors, right? So yes, so here you can see that this could be the prompt that we would be writing to call the models through an APIs. So here we are saying you are writing an email on behalf of someone. Take the input below and write a longer, a polished version of a text. Keep the tone professional and friendly. So you can able to see this is how the beautiful prompt would look like. So this is basically a context that we are setting. So then comes here is the input. Great to meet. Can we talk? This is the input that I'm giving. So with this input, I want my large language model to create maybe a simple email with a professional tone, right? So this is about a simple prompting. So now let us talk about implementing a RAG systems. So what we call it as RAG, which is nothing but retrieval augmented generations. At what point you need to definitely think about using RAG systems. So consider that. Okay, let's go with a simple example. Here is a simple prompt that we have inputted for a chat GPT. So here the question is, how the stock market is doing right now. I'm talking about, let's say if you go ahead and ask the question to a chat GPT, how is the stock market is doing right now? You can see this is what the output that we got from the large language model. It says, apologize, but as I'm AI language model, I don't have an access to a real time data, it says. So obviously this large language model has a limited memory. Just remember that. Maybe let's say we are talking about, let's talk about initial version of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT came to the market in the year of 2022, for an example. That means they might have trained their own model maybe before 2022. That means they have a history. They might have scrapped the complete data that is available till 2022. That means the model they have built as a knowledge till 2022 only. That means it doesn't have any much data that's available in today's world, for an example, right? So what happens in that perspective? So this is where we can able to use RAG systems. But don't talk about what we have today in a chat gpt. Chat gpt has a search interface. We are not talking about that. Okay, today if we go ahead and ask the question, okay, if we go ahead and ask the question with chat gpt, what is the stock matters doing today, it can use a search component. It can go ahead and browse through search component. I'm not talking about that feature, Nazim. Okay, so let's talk about every large language model. I mean, what you have today, it has some limited memory in it, right? Yeah. So now let us talk about how does this RAG systems could able to help you, right? So consider that a RAG systems are like a databases, right? You have a database where you put in your own data into it. And so where you're asking your large language model to go ahead and refer to the data that we have in a database and go ahead and fetch the answer. So consider that. Let me just explain a RAG in a different way. Before that, so let's try to understand a very simple way. So consider that you have some kind of a RAG database. We call it as vector database. So where you put in some real-time data. So consider that let's consider that there is a organization who gets a real-time a stock informations, for an example. Let's say real-time stock informations. They put in all the real-time stock informations to this RAG systems. And here comes your large language model. And here comes as a user, now you are asking, so what is the, how today the stock market is really doing? So what happens, your large language model go ahead and refers to the data that you have in a vector database, which is a RAG system that we're talking about. And it gets the real-time data and it responds you the actual output. It says, okay, today maybe the Amazon stock is doing good, it's high, and maybe it says Meta stocks are lower for 2 points or something like that, right? A RAG is basically you give an additional memory to it, right? So let's go ahead and understand further how it works. So when I'm talking about organizations here, enterprises uses what we call it as RAG, which we call it as retrieval augmented generations, to improve the prompts by additional external data, such as documents are part of them, for an example. So to help the large language model to give more accurate response. See, first what happens, the data is retrieved from the internal store, which is nothing but what I'm talking about, a vector database. It's a database. So then both the prompt and documents are turned into embeddings to calculate how similar they are. Based on the similarity score, the relevant document is selected and added to the prompt. So here we use different kind of vector databases. So it can be Pinecone or Chroma, or it can be Amazon has their own vector database. We call it as Amazon Open Search. You can use any kind of a vector database where you can put all this data, for an example. Okay, saying that, let's get into the very interesting discussion right now, how RAG works, for an example. Okay. So obviously Nazim here says, okay, I'm using ChatGPT 4.2 and it provides the stock information. Absolutely, yes, it provides the stock information, Nazim. But I'm not talking about ChatGPT 4.0. I'm talking about ChatGPT 3.5, if you can able to access that. So it has a limited data. The models that organizations deploy, they don't learn it in a real time. So they have AI agents today. If you're using a search component from ChatGPT, it uses a Google search or maybe any other search engine to go ahead and search. That's a different concept. Okay, so now let us talk about how does this RAG system works right now, right? So let's get into the part. Let's say if you want to implement the RAG system, that means your large language model doesn't have your own data. Okay, Nazim, I will ask you another question. So let's go ahead with the Nazim. Nazim says that ChatGPT 4 answers the stock, what's the stock market is doing today. Okay, I want you to go ahead and ask this question. So go ahead and ask this particular question. So maybe you're working on a specific organization, okay? And go ahead and ask, what does your organization makes a revenue? Maybe next 3 years. What exact revenue it's going to make? Or let's say, go ahead and ask your large language model or chat GPT, what kind of a project a specific organization, your own organization is doing. So do you think like large language model could able to answer that? Doesn't, because it doesn't have your own internal organization data. So let's talk about a simple rack system here. Okay. See, consider that if you go ahead and ask any large language model, right? Today, let's say we're building a application for a health insurance company. Maybe it can be, we are talking about Policy Bazaar or any kind of a health insurance company that we're talking about. But an existing large language model. So let's say this is where you have a large language model, right? So it doesn't have any informations related to our policies. So maybe consider that Policy Bazaar, they might have 1,000 policies. 1,000 policies has different information. That means 1,000 policies has different schemes. Maybe if you go for one policy, they might give a coverage till 10 lakhs. There might be a policy which gives a coverage for 1 crore. There might be a policy which might give coverage for 5 lakhs. And maybe there is a policy which only covers major diseases. And maybe there is a policy which covers every kind of a diseases in this world. But consider that if you go ahead and ask any questions to this large language model, they might not have this publicly available data. So this is how an organization set up a rack system. So first, an organization takes, let's say, a data, their own policy. Let's imagine Policy Bazaar, they might have thousands of policy documents. They take all these PDFs for an example, right? They take all these thousands of PDFs, and the first step is basically the information extraction. Okay, so first it can be, you might be having a PDF that is coming from your storage platform. You might have a database, right? We extract the information. Next step is we chunk the information, because these large language models are not, I mean, let's say when I'm talking about storing this data in a vector databases. So we don't store this huge amount of data as it is. We chunk the information. Just imagine we take this PDF, we cut it, we chop it, then we use something called embedding models. So let's try to understand what's the concept of embedding models. At the end of the day, your machine can able to understand just numbers. It cannot understand your pictures, your words, characters, nothing. It can understand numbers. That means we take this PDF, we cut it, chop it, we use something called embedding models. What does this embedding models does? It takes in your information and which converts into numbers. For an example, let's say you input a text called apple. Let's talk about an apple, a fruit. So let's say you're inputting a word, an apple, a fruit. This converts into relevant number. So consider that an apple, a fruit can be represented as 010181 or something like that, right? So this could be the embedding for a word apple, a fruit, for an example, right? So what happens, this embedding model converts every document, a policy document that you do have, into numbers, and it uses something called vector database. In this vector database, it stores all your informations in it as a numbers. So then comes your actual customers. Okay, so here in a vector database, you have all your internal company's policy. In this perspective, all the Policy Bazaar's policy informations are inside in this vector database. Okay, now let us talk about a customer journey. Because your large language model doesn't have any information about internal company's data. So here comes your customer and he inputs a prompt. He says that, okay, I'm looking for a policy. I have 5 people in my family. I have my father and mother who is greater than 45 years old. And I have my brother. We are 20, I mean, somewhere between 25 years old. I'm looking for a policy. My budget is maybe, let's say, I would say around 10 lakhs coverage that I'm looking forward. I would like to pay maybe somewhere around 20,000 rupees a month. I mean, maybe a year, maybe not. Let's talk about, this is the input. He's looking for a policy which can cover the entire family, and they're looking for a policy coverage up to 10 lakhs. Okay. And this is the input prompt. Get me the right policy that can able to help me. This is the prompt that he is inputting. So what happens? He inputs a prompt, right? Basically the input. So this input will be again, will be using an embedding model. This input will be again converted into numbers here. So consider that 010181 or something like that. So what happens once this embedding model converts this into numbers, it goes to a vector database and it does something called semantic search. So what is the semantic search? We don't want to get more details on this. We'll go into this program. We will get it. So semantic search is nothing but something called a similarity search. So you know how Google works. If you go ahead and Google some of the informations, let's say get me the nearest pizza shop I can visit. It go ahead and give you maybe more than 1,000 results at a time. But Google uses something called semantic search. It's not exact search. These are two different things: exact search and semantic search. Semantic search does a similar, it go ahead and fetches a similar items in the list. So consider that you're looking for, you're going to Google and you're searching for, get me the nearest pizza shop, right? It go ahead and get you the nearest pizza shop. It go ahead and give you a three results, and the first result would be the best one because it could be the more nearest pizza shop to your home, for an example. So that's how the similarity search works. So in this vector database, once we do a similarity search, let's say I have 1,000 policy documents. I have 1,000 policy documents of, for an example, of a policy bazaar. It go ahead and fetches maybe from this 1,000, maybe 10 policies are similar to what customer is looking forward. So what happens? This 10 policies will be fetched and it will be given to the customer basically. So what happens from this 1,000 policies, only 10 policies are relevant. So that's what exactly we're talking about, relevant data. It gets the relevant data, the 10 documents, then it inputs this relevant data along with your customer input to the large language model. This is where we are actually invoking a large language model. So along with the relevant data and the input from a customer, then it gives the response. So in the response, you can go ahead and see, okay, so these are the 10 policies, the policy number 1, policy number 3, policy number 4, blah, 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 policy number 10. So it goes ahead and gives, you can pick one among these 10 policies. A policy number 1 can give you 10 lakhs benefit, and you'd be paying around maybe 20,000 rupees a year, right? This is how the similarity search works. So now you understand where RAG systems play very important role, because most of the time your large language models doesn't have any idea about your internal company's document. And again, this is where the importance of the second step comes into the picture. And again, you can able to see that there is no need for fine tuning here, right? So there is no need for fine tuning. I don't want to fine tune my large language model. I can take a RAG database. I can put the any amount of a data that organization needs. I use LLM to go ahead and search in that document and get me the relevant results. So this could be the second approach, and that could be the second cost efficient approach for any organization. As I mentioned, organizations, they should never jump into the training or fine tuning instantly. They need to experiment between whether prompting itself with an existing large language model does works or not, and they will try to implement a RAG systems. They see whether a RAG solution could able to solve their problem, right? So okay, even if the RAG solution doesn't solve their problem, then they go for fine tuning method. So now let's go ahead and check how does this fine tuning actually works. So fine tuning. So fine tuning your foundation models here. So I mean, we are not completely training a model from a scratch. We are taking an existing model which is already trained. Maybe let's say we'll take a model from Llama, which is Meta. Facebook has a model which is open source and free to use. We can take it and I can take my internal documents of my organization. So let's say here I'm giving an example of travel policy documents, documentations. Let's assume it's a health insurance record documentation from Policy Bazaar, for an example, right? So here I will be going, first step is to take my data. Then I would be going ahead and picking the foundation model. So what model that you're going to pick here? So there are a lot of models that you can use. Maybe you can use a Llama model from Facebook. You can use a Claude model from Anthropic. You can even fine tune GPT models as well. And this is our second step. And how in this world you're going to fine tune this model? So if you want to fine tune the model, you need a machine, you need an infrastructure. So that's where the cloud platforms comes into the picture. When it comes to AWS or Azure, or maybe we're talking about GCP, they have an infrastructure where you can go ahead and fine tune your large language models basically, right? So consider that you can take a tool here. I will call it as Bedrock. Yes, we will be exploring a Bedrock in this program. You can use Bedrock, or it can use Azure AI Foundry or Google AI Studio, where you can input your own organization data and you can fine tune an existing foundation model. Then you have a fine-tuned model for your own organizations. That means you would be producing your own version of the large language model, and this large language model is aware and it's tuned to your own organization data. That means I have taken this 1,000 uh, health insurance records from Policy Bazaar. I might have fine tuned it and I produce my own large language model. So once you fine tune the large language model, there is no necessity of a RAG because your model itself aware about all the policy documents. That means what you can directly take your model and where you can go ahead and ask the model related to, okay, so I'm looking for a policy, I'm looking for 10 lakhs coverage, I'm willing to pay 20,000 rupees a year. So I will go ahead and prompt it. I don't need a rack systems, right? So this could be the second approach. But now let us talk about some of the benefits, as I mentioned. When we're talking about benefits, so there is no need for an example prompt here. So yes, still you need to input a prompt, but there is no need for the prompt engineering, a complex prompting techniques here. And again, let's say we are talking about it could able to, let's say when you have a necessity of let's say if you're implementing a rack systems or using a prompting is too much costly for you, that could be the scenario where you can able to reduce a lot of cost if you can able to fine tune your large language model. And then comes a privacy risk could be reduced here because you have your own model. You're not using APIs, you're not using any third party platform. When you're talking about data privacy, that's awesome. So then comes token limitations issues you might not have. But let's talk about the challenges here. The main challenges here is a costing basically. So when we are talking about large language models, they're supposed to be trained with a huge amount of data. See, consider that even though we are talking about fine tuning cannot be done with a few examples. You need to have thousands and thousands of examples to train an existing foundation model. Fine tuning a large language models itself costlier than implementing, let's say, a prompt engineering technique or rack systems. Yes, as we go below the graph, it will be difficult and expensive. So fine tuning your large language model would be costlier. So then let us talk about training your own model from the scratch. So do you think, you tell me in a chat window, do you think we can able to train our own foundation models from the scratch? That means, do you think you can able to, you can train your own foundation model from the scratch in your laptop? Maybe in next 1 or 2 hours? Definitely not. You cannot. So training a large language model, or maybe let's say what we're talking about, training your own foundation model from scratch, it's impossible for everyone here. So let's say this could be done by the huge MNCs that's outside in the market. So not every MNCs could able to produce their foundation model from a scratch. The reason is data, then comes the infrastructure cost. For a reason, it's called large language model because it has to be trained with a huge amount of data in the internet. First, you need to grab the huge amount of data, and then comes in order to train this huge amount of data, you need to have a right kind of infrastructure. You need to have a right kind of a GPUs. For an example, let's consider that today an organization uses a GPU which is called H100 GPUs from NVIDIA, which just cost one chipset cost 32 lakhs. I mean, one H100 GPU is not enough for training large language model. They might have thousands of H100 GPUs, maybe more than thousands in their organization, right? So training a large language model from a scratch, we can say it's an ideal for a highly specific task that requires a large amount of domain-centric data, first of all, and it provides the highest quality. It has to provide highest quality results, right? So however, what happens, this approach is also more expensive and difficult to implement. So that's where most of the organizations, they don't want to train their own models from scratch. Let's go ahead and take a look a few examples here. So Google has something called Gemini. Yes, Gemini models. Let's see how much Google has spent to train their Gemini Ultra model. It took $191.4 million, right? I don't think so we have such kind of an amount. So then comes, let's talk about GPT-4 from OpenAI. They took around $78.4 million to train it. And let's talk about very small model, a Llama 2 model with 70 billion parameters. It took $3.9 million. Obviously, this huge investment game has been broke by a Chinese model, that DeepSeek. But still, even though we are talking about a DeepSeek itself cost around $6 million to produce a computable model comparing with OpenAI, right? So still that is costlier, $6 million. So training a model is not for everyone, right? So that's the four different approaches for getting started with any kind of a large language model use cases in your organization. This is what exactly that we will be diving deep in our program. So saying that, now let us move on to the next topic, the interesting topic. Okay, so now I do have a good idea about prompting, rack systems, fine tuning, or training a model. So now what we do with that knowledge. So you know how to work with a RAG, where to use RAG, and how to use RAG. So now let us see if I want to build an application with it. So what you do, this is where lang chains comes into the picture. So consider that you want to build a solution for any organizations tomorrow. Maybe there is an organization who is looking for maybe some recommendation systems to be built for your organization. Maybe there is an organization who's looking for building maybe like a health insurance chatbot, like a policy buzzer example that I provided you, or any kind of one use case that you want to work. So how lang chains can play a very important role. Let's try to understand what is this lang chains. It's an open source framework, obviously designed to help developers to create an application that uses large language models. It provides tools and APIs. I mean, you can use lang chains with both Python and JavaScript to build any kind of a large language. I mean, any kind of a large language model applications out of it, actually, right? Okay, saying that, so let's try to understand how does this lang chains work. So consider that when we're talking about AI applications, usually follows the steps to process a data which is received. For an example, let's say there's an e-commerce website, right? So when you click to view an item, right, in a e-commerce website, let's consider that AI looks at the item, for an example, behalf of you, which is in your cart, and what's you have shown an interest before, for an example, to suggest other items might like it. So this data is sent to an AI model to make a recommendation system. I mean, to recommend a new products that you can able to buy. So when building such kind of an applications, let's say the steps needed to be carefully organized, defining what services to be used, how they receive the data, and the format of a data. So this requires many technical details like APIs, data structures, network access, security, for an example. So this is where actually the lang chains comes into picture. So lang chains can be used, as I mentioned, it can be used with JavaScript as well as a Python that helps you make building these AI applications easily. I mean, it handles a complex task. So developers don't have to code all the details. For an example, to interact with AI models, like you want to integrate with Llama model or ChatGPT models, LangChains lets developers simply input their credentials and prompts, and it take cares of technical aspects like endpoint or maybe like authentication, etc. So LangChain it's a simplest form where you can able to chain things together. You can able to chain different components of you building a generative AI application together. That's why it is called LangChain. See, consider that if you want to build any Gen AI application, you need a lot of components. First is LLM. LLM is something which is going to answer your question. You need a memory. You will be inputting a prompt. So you want to build agents, AI agents that we're talking about. You need a vector store where you can put your own internal documents of your organization, a metadata. So you need to chain all these components together. That's where LangChain comes into the picture. You chain everything together and you can able to solve any kind of a problem that your organizations have. Okay. So LangChain is a framework that you use for building a Gen AI application. As simple as that. Okay. Okay, so now let's get into the interesting topic. And again, the entire world is discussing about AI agents. Agents are everywhere. You know that AI agents are always in the news. And again, so AI agents are going to be a talk of a town for the next upcoming year, folks. Okay, so agents are already ruling our world. You know that, right? I mean, the crazy AI that's outside in the internet. Like you might have heard about it, or otherwise, go ahead and search for this after this session. Open Cloud. You might have heard about Cloud Code and Cloud Cowork, for an example. An Anthropic CEO just mentioned within 12 months, right? The software industry will be going to see a drastic amount of changes, right? So, okay, so we will discuss about what is exactly this AI agents and agentic AI, and you'll be learning how to build a production ready AI agents, a multi AI agents in this particular program. Okay, so when we're talking about AI agents, I mean, there's a lot of things that we hear in the AI world. So obviously, before we are talking about prompt engineering, we talked about RAG, we talked about fine tuning. So now we are talking about AI agents. What's the real deal? Let's discuss. So what is this AI agents and agentic AI? So why do we call it with two different names? I mean, there's a very thin line of boundary between that. So now let's go ahead and discuss about what is this AI agents, right? So AI agents are basically a programs designed to perform a specific tasks based on a predefined rules that we provide folks. So they operate with a set of boundaries and do not learn or adapt beyond their initial programming or beyond the boundary that we have set. That's what exactly an AI agents. Putting in a very simple way, it can be AI agents or agentic AI are basically an AI which can able to take some action, right? So behalf of you. So now let's talk about agentic AI. Then we will discuss with simple examples. When I'm talking about agentic AI, we can say they are an advanced AI systems. They are capable of independent decision making. So this agentic AI can able to learn continuously and basically they can adapt to a new situations which is going to arrive without explicit human interactions basically, right? So consider that this AI agents, what we call, they have their own skills, they have their own tools, right? Or let me just put it in a very simple way. So let's say, just imagine AI agents are basically like a recipe, a favorite food that you like to prepare, right? So consider that you take a maybe a bowl in a bowl, maybe we'll take some prompt engineering, we will take an LLM which is going to call as an engine, and we'll take a RAG, and additionally we will be going to provide an additional skills to that particular AI through tools what I'm talking about, right? We give access to multiple tools, right? AI decides which tool to be used and which tool to be called, right? So basically this is what exactly what we're talking about. Let's say AI agents or agentic AI. So now obviously this upcoming years is going to be more about AI agents. You will be hearing more. And this particular program, we spend, I mean, the most amount of a time in building AI agents only. We'll talk about what frameworks, what tools that we're going to use in our next upcoming topics. Yeah. Okay, let me just give a simple example of AI agents in a very simplest form. Okay, so let's say you're going to the restaurant. Okay, so here is your family. Okay, you're going to the restaurant. So let's talk about there's a waiter called Suresh. Okay, Suresh comes and asks you, so what do you like? So what do you like to have today, sir? Okay, so maybe you're ordering. Okay, I would like to order a biryani. So obviously, Suresh is a well-trained a waiter in that particular hotel, but let's say your family orders for a spicy or Rajasthan or Hyderabad biryani. Yes. So you instructed Suresh to go ahead and get the biryani. So that's what exactly Suresh has done. He went to his kitchen and he prepared a biryani for you, and he bought a plate of a biryani to your table. That's what exactly Suresh has done. So now let's talk about Rajesh for an example. Okay. So what does Rajesh could able to do? So Rajesh is again a waiter in same hotel, but consider that now Rajesh came to your table and he asked the question. So what do you like to have today, sir? So maybe consider that you said that, okay, I would like to order a biryani, a spicy Rajasthan biryani. And we know that we are in a hot summer right now, isn't it? So consider that Rajesh instead of Suresh just, if you make an order, if you order Suresh, he does exactly what you ordered for. So he exactly follows your order. But wherein Rajesh has some more intelligence. So what Rajesh does, so Rajesh understands your previous history because this is not the first time you're visiting that hotel. Rajesh knows you very well. He understands what you eat when you come to this hotel. And he also considers other factors. He considers the weather into the consideration. He knows that it's a summer and your family came with your kids, and again he considers, okay, what's the situation in a kitchen? Do we if I go ahead and prepare a biryani, do I have all the ingredients to prepare it? How much time it takes? And he also considers what's your favorite as well. Maybe consider that when you're visiting to this particular hotel, maybe you are really interested on vegetarian meals they provide. Maybe some instead of spicy food, maybe you would like to eat some sweet or something like that. So he understands, he has some knowledge on that. So he considers all the scenarios and he gives a recommendation for you. So this is a summer, so and you have a kids, do you like to really order a biryani because it will be spicy for your kids? So that's what exactly AI agents can able to do, right? So unlike a traditional AI, which exactly does what exactly you need, wherein we are talking about AI agents or agentic AI that we're talking about, right? It has an additional intelligence because it can able to act, it can able to access an external factors. It can understand what's the weather and what's the situation in the kitchen. Can we prepare a biryani within a few minutes or not? And it considers your favorite because you're visiting that particular restaurant for a long time, right? So it considers all the situation, and Rajesh as an AI agent or AI or agentic AI makes the recommendation for you actually. So it gives the recommendations, and so obviously it's for the well-being of you, right? That's how the AI agents work. So when we're talking about if you want to build an AI agents, as I mentioned, it's a mixture of large language models, RAGs, and it can able to take an action. So that means consider that Rajesh is not a real human being here. You're talking to a robot, or it can be a chat application. So you're just asking the AI agent, I would like to order a biryani, but it recommends some good food for you. And you ask, okay, I would like to go for a good vegetarian meal. And this AI agent can take action. What do you mean by action? It's not just a chat interface. It can go ahead and book the order in a kitchen. That means someone will prepare the vegetarian meals for you. So that's how it's going to work. So isn't it awesome? So where we are heading towards in the year of 2025, are you really excited to learn this? So let's get started. So now let us focus on the tools that we will be covering in this particular program, the different tools for Gen AI. So let's say here in this particular program, we'll be focusing on not just a one cloud, it's a multi-cloud Gen AI program. So we do cover Azure, AWS, and GCP as well. So now let us get started. Let's try to understand the generative AI tech stack, how it look like. So obviously the first thing, it will be starting from the infrastructure, correct? So we are talking about, consider that if you want to deploy any large language model, you need to have an infrastructure. So this is where the hardware providers like Intel and obviously Nvidia plays very important role. It can be fine tuning your large language model, or you want to build, you want to deploy such a huge large language model that you're fine tuned. Maybe you need a right kind of a GPU, right? Or it can be AMD. So on top of it, you need a cloud infrastructure, because when we are talking about generative AI is where cloud platforms play a very important role. Yes, there are organizations who might have an on-premises setup. They might have an enough infrastructure, but consider that most of the generative AI applications today run on top of a cloud platforms. It can be Azure, AWS, or a GCP that we are more interested in because they are the leading platforms outside. So then comes picking the right foundation model is a next step. So because you cannot go ahead and pick the random model that's outside in the market, you need to pick the right model that really solves the kind of a problem that you do have. So on top of it, then you might want to fine tune it. And again, we know when you need to fine tune, when you should not. So then comes on top of it where you want to implement an operations, what we're talking about, MLOps. So then comes, you might on top of it, you might have a data platforms where you, how you might bring in a data to the model to invoke a model. So then comes an application experience. Maybe on top of it, you want to build an application. So you want to build some kind of a front end application, how your customer is going to use your generative AI models. Maybe you want to build this application for your internal use for your organization. So this is how the stack is going to look like. Okay, so when we're talking about Gen AI and cloud, do you know one thing? So in this particular program, we will be covering generative AI on a not one cloud platform. It's on multi-cloud. So definitely it's a multi-cloud Gen AI course that we're talking about. So first of all, why cloud? Do we need to really learn about this cloud? Okay, here is the answer. So just learning about generative AI without cloud platform will be completely useless. Why? Because let's try to understand. So where does a most amount of the AI workloads, I'm talking about the real world AI workloads, runs today? Definitely on top of cloud platforms. So in this particular program, we will be covering generative AI end to end, and not on just one cloud platform, three leading cloud platforms outside in this world. So obviously we're talking about AWS, Azure, GCP. Yes, as we discussed. So we'll be going through all the different tools that in terms of, let's say, generative AI, which is offered on top of, let's say, AWS, in terms of Azure, in terms of GCP. Obviously, cloud is really must. So saying that, not just limited to cloud platforms, in this particular program, we'll be also covering the open source tools as well. So obviously there are a lot of different frameworks that is outside in the market, which makes more sound in terms of, let's say, building an AI agents. And we're talking about tools like LangGraph, right? Can be LangChains, A2A. We'll discuss about more. So now let us talk about the set of tools that we will be majorly focusing on top of cloud platforms when we're talking about, let's say, generative AI. So let's say when we're talking about AWS or Azure or GCP, they got their own tools, infrastructure on top of cloud platforms for any organizations to get started with building a production grade generative AI applications over there. So obviously, let's say when we're talking about AWS, we are looking for getting started with Amazon Bedrock end to end. And when we're talking about Azure, they call it as Azure AI Foundry. We'll be getting started with Azure AI Foundry for building an end-to-end generative AI applications, as well as when it comes to GCP, they have Google AI Studio or a Vertex AI, so where you can able to get started with building an end-to-end, let's say, generative AI applications. Obviously, the cloud is must, and as we are talking about, so the hard truth is when you apply for any kind of generative AI jobs, definitely the cloud is a must on top of that particular JDs. I mean, I'm not talking about one cloud, all those three different cloud platforms that we're talking about. And not just limited to, let's say, the generative AI tools that we are talking about on top of cloud platforms, we'll be also exploring other tools on top of cloud. It can be, let's say, the tools for creating vector stores. We talked about vector stores like AI search on top of Azure. And let's say we are talking about, let's say, playing with other tools like AWS Lambda, playing with, let's say, Azure Machine Learning Workspace, or let's say we are talking about SageMaker, other third-party tools like Tavly. So if you don't know what is Tavly is, we have Google search, we have Bing search. Similar to that, Tavly is especially made for a search engine for generative AI. So we'll be also talking about other various different tools within the cloud platform for building an end-to-end Gen AI applications. And as we discussed, not limited to the cloud platform, here comes the set of open source tools that we will be covering in this particular program, starting from obviously, let's say the Lang chains, which is making a more sound in the market, and the family of a Lang chain, which is a Lang graph, which you can able to use it to build what we call it as not just AI agents. Let's say the year of 2025 is all about AI agents, but you can see AI agents has been evolved like anything else. So this program, right, what we say, it's a top notch of what is there available in the generative AI in this world. So we get to cover everything up to date, what is there in this world. I mean, yes, we will be going ahead and building a projects which is based off not just a single agent. We are talking about agentic workflows. We're talking about building a multi-agents. Yes, you can use frameworks like LangGraph for building a multi-agent based, let's say, agentic workflow projects, as well as we are talking about one of the tool which is again making more sound in the market, MCP, a model context protocol. We'll be also using a model context protocol to build the projects. And here comes the best tool, which I like most, which is A2A. So what is A2A? Guess the name. What is this A2A? A2A stands for agent to agent, which is open source protocol, which has been, released to the market by GCP. Obviously, Google have made it as open source. So not just limited to that. Let's say we will be going ahead and playing with let's say Hugging Face models, Facebook AI similarity search is an let's say framework for building a vector store, agent development kit. Similar to that, let's say Google has released another development kit itself for getting started with building an let's say a production grade, let's say the agentic AI applications for your organizations. Will be also getting started with agent development kit and set of other tools. Let's say it can be a ChromaDB, Pinecone, Crew AI for building AI agents, MLflow, Evidently AI for monitoring, Llama Index, etc. Right? So these are the set of open source tools that we're talking about. So saying that, we will be also talking about, let's say, the operations side of generative AI here. And let's say we are talking about MLOps for LLMs. So basically, what do you mean by MLOps for LLMs? So basically, we are talking about machine learning operations. That's what exactly MLOps stands for. So here we are talking about how you can able to implement an MLOps practices for delivering any kind of LLMs to the production. Okay. So before we getting started, let me just have some water. Okay, so obviously we discussed about fine tuning, isn't it? See, obviously not every organization will be jumping into the concept of, okay, let me fine tune my own model. Obviously, once they have a desired need, they want to go ahead and fine tune their models. I mean, they want to take their own internal organization data and they want to fine tune their model and they want to go ahead and deploy their own model to the production. So, and let's say they want to implement some kind of an automation over there. This is where we are talking. We'll be also talking about MLOps for LLMs. So it's all about, let's say, the first foremost step. So obviously a data preparation and versioning. So you'll be bringing a lot of data, internal data of your organization that you want to fine tune on top of, let's say, the existing foundation model that's outside in the market. So you want to prepare the data and your data might have a versions. So you bring your data. Then comes, you'll be building a pipeline for, let's say, fine tuning your model. So let's say I might take an existing Llama model, which is open source model. I might take Mistral model, which is an open source model, a DeepSeek model. I might take this model and I will take my own data and I will be started fine tuning it. So what happens post fine tuning job? I will be having my artifacts. What do you mean by artifacts here? So artifacts are basically what we're talking about. Let's say each and every time when you fine tune your model, you'll be getting your own version of a model. Okay, so let's imagine, let's say version 1 may not be the only model that you might be deploying to the production in the future. You might go ahead and fine tune again and again. You might produce different versions of model, n number of versions of model. So this is where an artifact registry comes into the picture. Otherwise we call it as model registries, as dedicated tools that you can able to use it for versioning your models here. It can be a classical machine learning models to the Gen AI models. We use model registries for that purpose. Let's say then we are talking about, let's say now you have your first version of a model. Let's assume, okay, what is next step? The next step, I want to go ahead and deploy this version 1 of your own fine-tuned model to the production. So this is where again I will be having another pipeline which picks the first version of a model, or whatever the version that you have trained. It picks the best performing model that you do have. Then it goes ahead and deploys your model to the production. So once your model is deployed to the productions, from there you can able to start using this model along with a prompting or maybe a RAG. You can go ahead and use it for your own applications, right? So this is where once the model has been deployed to the production, this is where prompting comes into the picture from your users and the predictions will be generated. Then comes the foremost important thing that we will be discussing throughout this particular program is responsible AI. So what is responsible AI? We'll discuss that in the next particular slide here. So, but let's say why responsible AI plays very important role. So obviously when we're talking about responsible AI, it's all about a responsible way of your organizations, your developers are building a generative AI application, a responsible innovation that we call. You know that today when we're talking about in the world of generative AI, so generative AI can be misused in various different ways. So consider that, let's say we're talking about, it can be a text generation model, image generation model, video generation model. It can be anything. So consider that today, if let's imagine the model without responsible AI. So any users of yours can able to generate an offensive content, right? Offensive text can be generated. Offensive text can able to hurt someone. People can able to generate an offensive pictures, offensive videos. So this is where responsible AI comes into the picture. Responsible AI is all about, let's say you will be defining the set of rules that your AI will be also following, and as well as your user will be following. So let's say if an user or an AI, if it generates any offensive content, responsible AI just filters that out. So that's how it's going to work. Okay, saying that we do understand. So what is MLOps for LLMs? It's all about learning how to build a complete automation to deliver any kind of an AI to the production here. So then comes the foremost really important thing here. Let's say we are talking about monitoring and performance evaluation. So obviously when we're talking about generative AI engineers are more of development work. As we discussed already, you'll be hardly working on building a generative AI applications for different problems that you want to solve for different organizations. But as we're talking about, let's say you'd be focusing further, you'll be going to the different positions. Let's say especially when you're going to apply for a lead positions, right? An architect kind of a positions, a specialist kind of a positions in generative AI. So monitoring and performance evaluation plays very important role we get to cover in this particular program. So what do you mean by monitoring and a performance evaluation that I'm talking about? So let's say monitoring ensures, let's say, real-time tracking of a model that you have. Maybe let's say you're building any kind of a generative AI application. It can be a RAG based, prompt engineering based, a complete agentic AI or multi-AI agent. At the end of the day, we invoke a model. So monitoring ensures, let's say, real-time tracking of your application. Basically, we're talking about in order to monitor your model's accuracy, biases from your model, drifts, what we're talking about. So while when we are talking about this LLM evaluation, basically checks a text quality. Let's say we are talking about coherence, correctness for an example. And we also use what we call it as, let's say, heuristic metrics. One second. So let's say we will be also talking about measuring the heuristic metrics, which has something called BLUE score or ROGUE score. So basically this kind of a metrics provides, let's say, a quick rule-based assessment. So how good your model is working in a production. So whether your customers are happy. See, sometimes your AI might become more harsh for your people. Maybe your AI is producing some toxic results. Definitely, right? You don't want your AI applications to produce a toxic result. The question is, how do you monitor that? Maybe consider that throughout this demo, we talked about, let's say, prompt engineering, building a RAG applications, and we talked about AI agents. You can build any kind of a Gen AI applications, but at the end of the day, how do you measure the quality? How do you measure your AI is responsible? And basically, let's say we're talking about how do you ensure that, let's say you have built some kind of a chat application for your kids, or maybe which is going to help your kids to do some mathematics, or some it's going to help your kids to do some homework. How do you ensure the answers that is going to be provided by your generative application is correct? So consider that, okay, you're asking a question to a chat GPT, Gemini, Claude. So how do you ensure that the responses that AI produces is correct? Right, this is where again we'll be talking about a concept of LLM as a judge. So LLM as a judge, let's say basically it's all about again building an automation in terms of automating the evaluation for a scalable and consistent scoring. So basically the concept of LLM as a judge is simple. So consider that you have your source LLM. A source LLM is nothing but an LLM that you have used in your project. And let's say I will be bringing some kind of a judge LLM. Maybe consider that you have used GPT models as your source LLM in your application. I will be bringing a Gemini models as a judge LLM. Whatever the responses that your source LLM produce, I will be taking those responses. I will be using Gemini to evaluate that. So that's how it's going, the monitoring and performance evaluation is going to work. So together, when we are talking about this techniques helps improve the reliability as well as an accuracy and fairness of your LLMs. Very important topic. Yes, this is where we'll be exploring a tools like MLflow and Evidently AI. So this is where we'll be learning how to use kind of a tools in order to evaluate the metrics, the biases, the drifts from your model. So saying that, then obviously we discussed about let's say the responsible AI. As we talked about, responsible AI refers to the ethical and accountable development and deployment and use of your AI systems. You build any kind of a Gen AI application, whether it is prompt engineering, AI agents, RAG based, multi-agent, responsible AI is essential. So basically it ensures that AI models and solutions are fair, transparent, secure, and aligned with the human values. At the end of the day, any kind of AI application that you develop, it's going to be used for helping someone, right? Basically we are help these AI applications are built for helping human beings, right? So while minimizing the potential risk and biases, right? So obviously, as I mentioned, just think about, let's say today it can be text generation models, image generation models, or let's say video generation models. Without responsible AIs, let's say if any users could able to ask your AI to generate an offensive text could, which the text that might hurt someone. So this is where you'll be bringing a responsible AI which is going to act as a filter. So that means consider that if user is trying to generate any offensive content, so maybe let's say if your user is trying to generate some offensive content, so maybe for an example, I will throw a simple example. Let's say what if I say that, again, let's say, can you go ahead and generate a Windows activation keys, right? We all know that Windows activation keys are, I mean, Windows is licensed software. We cannot suppose to go ahead and get those license keys like that, right? Which is an offense over there. So let's say if users are trying to generate some such kind of a keys where responsible AI act as a filter saying, and it will throw back and response to your actual users saying that I cannot assist with the query that you asked right now. And let's say your AI might also generate some offensive text. Maybe you're asking some questions to your AI. Maybe your AI has provided some toxic results. So a responsible AI can be also act as a filter in order to go ahead and filter the offensive response that AI also produced. So responsible AI for both, also for your users, also for your AI. Okay, with that, just learning how to build a generative AI applications alone would be helpful for you to go ahead and land in a job? Do you think? No, definitely not. So just learning how to build an application, a Gen AI, any kind of a Gen AI application, it can be prompt engineering, RAG, multi-agent, single agent, doesn't help until unless you don't know how to deploy your generative AI applications to the production and to scale it, right? So this program is not just about building or learning to build generative application. It's everything that you need. So this is where we'll be also exploring how we can use Docker's Kubernetes in order to deploy and scale your generative AI applications. Yes, we'll be learning how to deploy your applications on top of AWS, Azure, GCP. They have their own ways, right? So obviously using Azure Container Apps, it can be Kubernetes services in a cloud. Then comes, let's say we're talking about other Kubernetes serverless platforms, how you can able to go ahead and deploy your applications. Not just that, how do you build an automation for delivering your end-to-end generative AI applications to the production, right? The operations side of Gen AI, what we call it as Gen AI operations or Gen AI ops, has been also covered in this particular program. Okay, with that, after a long wait, obviously, I don't want you folks to make you wait for a long time. Yes, with that, now let's get started with an awesome demo that we have planned for you. Let me just teach you how to build an AI agent in a live session. Let's get started. So now it's time for us to get started with a live demo. So let's get started with this awesome demo. So what I'm going to show you right now, so obviously, yes, we will be learning a lot and lot in our program. Obviously, in this demo, I'll be going ahead and showing you how can we quickly go ahead and build an AI agent, a simple AI agent on top of Azure AI Foundry, as well as if a time permits, I will be showing another demo. How can we use a VO 3 model? The VO3 model makes a lot of sound in the market. Basically, we're talking about Google's video generation model, which generates a video along with an audio as well. So let's see if time permits. I will show you the demo on both. Now let's get started. Now let me just bring you the screen. Yep. I believe you could able to see my screen. So obviously, I have already created my, let's say what we call it as Azure AI Foundry project. So we'll be getting started with Azure AI Foundry in detail when we're getting started with a live session. On top of Azure Cloud, I already created an Azure AI Foundry hub as well as a project. So here you can able to see right now I'm on top of Azure AI Foundry. One second, let me have some water. We'll get started quickly. Okay. So right now we are on top of Azure AI Foundry. So we will be getting started with Azure AI Foundry in detail, end to end. When we are getting started with the program, we'll be exploring all these options that we do have in detail. But anyway, let's have some quick tour of few options that you can able to find, right? So right now, let's say in an overview page where you can able to initially find an API keys, SDK informations for any organizations to go ahead and build a generative AI applications. So we'll go for model catalog. So model catalog is let's say we know what is a catalog is. So model catalog is a catalog where you can go ahead and find all the different kind of models which is been available on top of Azure AI Foundry. See, as we're talking about, let's say Azure itself, they might have their own Gen AI models, and Azure has partnered with other providers, like let's say obviously, as we discussed, Azure has a closed, Azure has an investment on OpenAI. You can find all the OpenAI models on top of let's say Azure AI Foundry. You can able to see that the latest GPT-5 Pro models are available on top of let's say Azure AI Foundry. Not just that, you can able to see we do have models from Grok, Elon Musk, you know it. And if I scroll down, you can able to see a lot of other models. You can see models from DeepSeek. So if you scroll down, you can see the models from Llama. So we do have all the latest Llama models on top of Azure, like Llama for Scout, Llama for Mavic. We do have models from Cohere, again from Mistral. There are a lot. You can able to go ahead and browse through, let's say different kind of providers that we do have. So you can able to easily go ahead and pick the model. So here you can able to see the different providers that we do have: OpenAI, Mistral, Microsoft, Core, Photo, Cohere, right? A different kind of providers where Microsoft has collaborated with. So what we will do, first step, I will show you how to deploy this model to the production first of all. Okay. So here, yes. So I will be going ahead and picking a, let's say a simple model. So I will go ahead and pick GPT-4 or GPT-4 or even a GPT-5 we can pick, not a problem. So here I will be simply going ahead and pick, let's say GPT-4o model. Perfect. So once I select this model, all I need to do, click on this, use this model. So once I click on this, use this model, and you can able to see the basic informations of what we're going to deploy. So this is the name of my deployment. I will be calling it as GPT-4o. There are different kind of deployment types. There is something called global standard, our global batch. There are different options. We'll talk about what is this different deployment types later when we are getting started with the live session. And you can also see where exact region this particular model is going to be deployed. So by default, it's going to be deployed on East US2. That is perfect. I will simply click on deploy. That's it. That's all what I need to do. Okay, so let the model be deployed. In the meantime, the model is getting deployed. So let me just talk about what is this AI agent that I'm talking about. Okay, so let's say we're going to build a personalized, a travel assistant AI agent. So, what do you mean by that? So, consider that we all go for our vacations, trips with your families. It can be your friends. See, what we do, we go ahead and book some packages, right? So, there are a lot of, tourist companies, tourist guide companies outside in the market. I mean, internet. You can go ahead and talk to them. You can book, let's say, 5 days, 5 days, 6 nights trips for different countries. Let's say maybe you want to go for Paris. You want to go for Andaman. You want to go for Switzerland, etc. You might like. I mean, we all have our own dreams, definitely, right? So what if, let's say, instead of you making a call, let's say for an example, let's say if I want to plan a trip for Switzerland, I might be going ahead and making a call to the let's say a travel agent company where I will go ahead and browse for the informations. I will be asking a couple of questions. So what would be the costing? What are the destinations? How many? I mean, first day, where are we visiting? Second day, where are we visiting? What are we going to do? Where are we going to have a dinner? So we all have those questions. We What we do is basically we go ahead and call a specific travel agent company, and we talk to the human beings over there. So what if the concept is if we can completely replace a human beings here just by using AI agent? So what I'm going to build is this. So you know who is this person? Obviously this is us. So an user is going to have a conversation with the AI agent that we're going to build on top of Azure AI Foundry. So we'll be going ahead and building a RAG. Obviously in a RAG we will be going ahead and storing all the details of a specific travel agent company. Maybe a specific travel agent company is providing a tour for different countries. Maybe let's say we are talking about this specific documents which I would like to store in the RAG. So let's say we'll talk about this specific travel agent company. They're offering, let's say, trips for Andaman Nicobar Islands in India, Europe trip, they have Paris trip, they have Switzerland trip. Okay, so these are the documents, but you can just go ahead and store as many documents that you need. But right now I'm just going with this 4 documents. If I go ahead and enter inside these documents, all you can able to see a complete brief description about a complete details about a tour. Let's say here we have Amazing Andaman, the duration, number of nights that you're going to spend, number of days that you're going to spend, some destinations that you're going to visit. And I do also have some costing per person per day. I just put it as 1,000 rupees a day. And we do have other informations, tour highlights. We have what are we going to do in a day 1, what are we going to do in a day 2, what are we going to do in a day 3, what are we going to do in a day 4. So I mean, including the locations where we're going to stay, what time that we're going to arrive, the activities that we're going to do over there. So what is included? Let's say for an example, if you're purchasing any tourist package, sometimes the tourist company might include the flight charges. They might not include the flight charges. They might include a local transportation allowance. They might not. So there are different questions, the different things that we would like to ask, right? So whether breakfast is included or not, lunch is included or not, dinner is included or not, right? So we do have all those questions, but literally we ask those questions in a phone conversation. But what if we can able to replace that with AI agent? I'm going to store all the informations in the RAG. I mean, all the tourist destinations. And then here I have a tool. Basically, when I'm talking about AI agents, our agentic AI is all about an actionable AI. So AI agents can able to take an action behalf of us. So here I have something called GST calculator tool, because let's say here I'm going to say my query would look like I'm planning for a trip to Switzerland. I'm just coming, let's say I'm planning to come with 5 people's I mean, which is my family. I would like to know what would be costing for 5 people's when I want to visit Switzerland. So obviously here the GST calculator tool will be triggered by AI agent. So your AI agent will call this GST calculator tool in order to calculate what will be the total bill amount with the GST that I'm going to pay. Very much simple. So let's get started. So now I have deployed the model because your model is going to play a very important role. We call your model as an engine. So your AI agent will be powered by a GPT-4o model that we have deployed basically, right? So now I will quickly go to this agent section towards left side navigation panel. Okay, so here I will be going ahead and proceeding by clicking on, let's say, create an agent. There is one dummy agent. So I will just simply click new agent. So yeah, so I have some new agent has been created, a dummy agent. So I will go ahead and give it a name. So I will just call it as travel agent. So this will be my agent name, and your agent will be powered by GPT-4o model. I mean, you can use any model as I mentioned, but here I'm just going with GPT-4o model. And here I'm going to allocate some instructions. And instructions is basically what is a duty. So basically, we can able to allocate some skills to your AI agent. So this is what my AI agent has to do. You're a personal travel assistant helping people plan their holiday trips and recommend the best places to visit. Perfect. So this is where we have an options to allocate different kind of tools, different kind of components to build your AI agent. So we have knowledge, and knowledge is nothing but knowledge base. We can also call a RAG as a knowledge base. So this is where I'm going to click on add, and this is where I'm going to create a knowledge base. We do have a lot of options to create a knowledge base. We'll discuss in detail later. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly go ahead and upload all the files that I do have in my local PC to go ahead and create what we call it as a vector store. So here I will simply click select local files. Yeah, here are all the 4 documents that I'm talking about. I'm going to click open. I'm going to upload and save all the 4 files. So I mean, with this 4 documents, I'm going to create a vector store. A vector store can be also called as a RAG, or let's say, I mean, a vector store is basically what we're talking about, a DB. So where we go ahead and query for the context, as we discussed already in our architecture. Perfect. Okay, here we go. So I'm done with, let's say, creating the knowledge base. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do, as I mentioned, the next part in my architecture, we're done with RAG. The next thing is we need to go ahead and calculate a GST calculator. A GST calculator, for an example, it comes under, let's say we are talking about an actions. So what kind of an actions that your AI has to take? So let's say I will be chatting with AI. I will be asking, okay, I would like to visit Switzerland for 5 people. So what will be the, let's say, a GST bill for me? What happens when you're asking such kind of a questions? Your AI will use tools that I've attached under actions in order to calculate that GST bills. So I will quickly go ahead and click add. There are different tools that you can able to link, which can be part of your tools. You can also call a functions, but here what I'm going to do, I'm going to call a code interpreter. So what exactly a code interpreter does, here it will go ahead and execute a code in order to calculate a in order to calculate a GST. So what I will do, so here we can go ahead and upload any different kind of a code. It can be C, C++, Python. Yes, I do have a Python code. Let's say this is the Python code that I do have. All it does basically, I will be not going into this code in detail. So basically here the GST is for 10%. So it's going to read the total number of days in, and let's say number of people that we're going to visit, and number of days. Based on that, it's going to calculate a GST. I will be simply going ahead and selecting this particular Python script. So here we go. I do have this Python script. Yep. So this is going to be my tool. I will simply click upload and save. That's it. We are all done. Okay. So that's it. We are all done. So now let me just wait for this tool to be created. Okay. Perfect. It's getting ready. Yeah, perfect. That's it. We do have our AI agent that is ready. So the name of our agent is called Travel Agent. It's going to use a model GPT-4o model. It has a knowledge base. It has a tool. And we do have model settings like temperature and top P. These are basically what we call it as hyperparameters. We'll discuss in detail later. So this hyperparameters would helpful for you to understand how good your output you're looking forward. Let's say we are talking about whether you need more creativity or you want more desired results. Yeah, this is good. So what I will do, I will simply scroll up, and you can see we do have an option called try in playground. Yeah. So I will be simply going to the playground. Yes. So this is where I can go ahead and chat with my AI agent. Yep. So now let me just get started. So what I'm going to do is this, right? So let's say here I have my, let's say details. So I will be opening any one of the document here. Perfect. So let's say this is the Andaman document. Perfect. So now let me just go ahead and type the query, right? So I am planning for a trip to, I would say, Andaman. Can you let me know places that I am going to visit? And and I am planning for 5 peoples. So let me just also clear typos. Planning for 5 peoples. Can you get me complete GST? Okay. I'm sorry. I just triggered my voice chat here. 1 second. Yeah, let me just type again. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, I am planning for trip to Andaman with 5 peoples. Can you get me places that I am going to visit and use the tool to calculate GST. Okay, GST bill for 5 peoples. Okay, so let's say this is my query. Let's see what your AI agent has to respond for us. Yep, here we go. You can see it says looking for the references. Basically, it's using the files that I have provided in order to go ahead and look for the informations. And you can see this is the magic. This is an actual magic. So here I'm not asking your AI to, let's say here I'm not triggering anything. Here I'm not running any code. All I'm doing is I'm just having a conversation with an AI agent. An AI agent takes care of everything. So let's say this is the highlights what we got. So for your trip for Andaman with 5 peoples, the tour package consists of highlights. Yeah, you can see Port Blair, Havelock Islands, Neil Islands, duration, and cost calculation. You can see a cost per day is 1,000 rupees. For 5 people's daily cost is, yes, 1,000 into 5,000 rupees, and for total 6 days, it's so far it's calculated. You can see, I mean, let's say 30,000 rupees what it has calculated. So GST bill calculations, for calculating a GST bill, you can see it is actually going ahead and using the code interpreter. A code interpreter is an actual tool that I have created as part of an AI agent. It's using this code interpreter in order to come up with a GST invoice. You can see here, let's say the base cost is 30,000 rupees, and GST for 18,000 is 5,400. I mean, basically, your AI is using something called code interpreter to run the code, basically. So because your AI cannot run the code by itself, it cannot compile the code. So that's how it works. So here, the another magic, I can also go ahead and interact with voice mode as well here. So let's say I will just quickly click on this voice mode. Hey, hi. I'm planning for a trip to a Switzerland. Can you just get me a quick brief of what is included in a Switzerland and how much they are costing for per day? Yeah.
Got it. Continuing with your Switzerland trip details. Package highlights. 1. Interlaken. Boat ride to Thun, visiting Schadau Park, Trummelbach Waterfalls and St. Beatus Caves exploration. Chocolatier tour to try Swiss chocolate tasting. 2. Lucerne. Mount Titli's excursion, snow activities and iconic views. Lake Lucerne cruise and sightseeing. Tour at Chapel Bridge. 3. Zurich. Zurich City Tour, Bahnhofstrasse, Old Town and Lake Zurich. Rheinfalls visit. Cost details. Cost per person per day, 15,000 Indian rupees.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, we know that. I can also go ahead and interact with the chat. So this is one of an example. And what is the capabilities? What kind of an AI agents that you can able to build? So here I'm just using a console to go ahead and build this AI agent. But what we going to do? We're going to build this kind of generative AI applications for the real time use case. We'll be using a source code. We'll be using an SDKs which is provided by Azure AI Foundry. Just imagine the same kind of a scale, the same kind of a project. I mean, this is just a basic, such a high level projects that we're talking about where you have multiple agents coming together. We will be building such kind of a AI agents projects, not just on top of Azure, AWS, Azure, as well as GCP, including open source tools as well. So yeah, so saying this, Quickly, I would like to also give you one more demo into, let's say, Veo 3 on top of, let's say, Google Cloud. So here, for getting started with Veo, I will be getting into Vertex AI. So one more demo. So let's say we are talking about a video generation service. So perfect, let's get started. So I will be getting started with Vertex AI. So we will be getting started with Vertex AI, I mean, in detail. So for generative AI purposes. Perfect. So with that, now I will be quickly showing you how we can go ahead and generate a VO3, a video, a real-time video with audio. So audio also will be generated by your VO models here. So I will be clicking on generate a video. So here you can able to, obviously, you know, this a viral model, Nano Banana. You might have seen people using Nano Banana to generate pictures. You can also use Nano Banana. There are different models. So what I'm really interested is a VO. I will be going ahead and selecting a VO. So VO has a lot of models within the cloud platform. So here I will be using VO3 fast model. So totally it is producing four results, four videos it will generate, but I will just go for one video. It will be 16:9 ratio video. It's going to generate a maximum of 8 seconds video. That is fair enough. Here I can change the resolution 720 to 1080p. I will go with 720 just to make sure that, okay, I can quickly go ahead and generate this video. Okay, so here comes my beautiful prompt, folks. Okay, you can see, just go ahead and read this prompt. So here I say, yeah, a bustling Indian flower market filled with a vibrant marigold and jasmine garland. A man picks up a garland and says, "These flowers carry blessings." A woman smiles and whispers, "Then let's take them for a Diwali festival tomorrow." The ambient sound of a market chatter and temple bell fills the air, right? So let's get started. So, yep. So now it's going to take a couple of minutes for this video to be generated. So we'll be also getting started with, let's say, what we're talking about, image generation, video generation on top of our program as well. With that, let it take some time for videos to be generated. In the meantime, we'll go back to our slides and we'll discuss about further topics. So now let us talk about the career opportunities in generative AI. So obviously you do understand the power of generative AI, and in this today's world, AI is trying to reach every corners of this world, right? So, and again, here's a quote. It's not a quote; it's a reality, which is quoted by Bill Gates. You know that Bill Gates is pretty much famous as a founder of Microsoft, and now he is pretty much famous of making the predictions of a future. So he did predict at a pandemic. Yes, pandemic just happened in this world, and again, Bill Gates just said, it's just 3 months ago. He says AI is the first technology that has no limits. So what do you mean by that? So what do you mean by AI is the first technology that has no limits? So let's talk about your existing technology that you work. See, consider that when we are talking about a different technology that we use in a software development, we talked about blockchains. Blockchains are buzz in for the last previous years, but we are not talking more about blockchain because everything has a saturation. We are talking about DevOps. So DevOps is a standard practice. It has a set of practices that we use, and DevOps has now evolved throughout this world. And DevOps has a saturation. It has its own limits. What we can do with that, right? It is used for building an automation. It can be any software development. But now let us talk about AI. AI has no limits. AI is evolving in a different direction, isn't it? Because let's say we are talking about, in early stage, we are talking about simple models. We are talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning. Today we are talking about generative AI. So, do you think generative AI will be getting saturated? No. Next to generative AI, we're talking about AI agents. Then what else? We are talking about AGIs, right? Artificial general intelligence. What else after AI, AGIs? We are talking about something called ASIs, artificial super intelligence. So, AI, as Bill Gates said, it's the only technology that has no limits. Okay, this looks like a beautiful quote, isn't it? What does that really matters for you? See, consider that most of the peoples when I talk, they say that, okay, Sharath, I'm in a bench, I'm in a specific domain where I don't see the growth. It's stagnated here. I mean, I stuck. I couldn't able to learn much. I don't see a growth here because obviously every technology has its own saturation stage, right? So if you're looking for the career where you never see that particular saturation, AI is the best position for you, right? So That's why where everyone in this world is running beyond AI, and why everyone is willing to learn AI here, right? So yes, are you willing to be in a position where you see a continuous evaluation, development in a technology, so where you can keep on learning and you can able to double and triple your salaries? So that's where AI is the best position for you folks. Okay. So when I'm talking about who can be part of generative AI, who should learn this, right? It can be anyone from the tech platform. It can be any tech professionals. Or you can be an existing AI or machine learning engineer. You can be a data scientist, a researcher, and you can be a software engineer as or a developer, because you can able to build a generative AI solution for any organization. There is no need for you need to know a data science here, machine learning here. It's not required. You can be a cloud engineer or DevOps engineer. You would like to transform yourself into generative AI, or you can be applied scientist or AI enthusiast, or you might be a startup founder and entrepreneur where you're looking for developing or solving a specific problem for any organizations here. So you might be let's say a product manager or a business leader, or you can be anyone who is interested to get into the AI, right? So now let us talk about let's say a specific jobs that is originated from generative AI today. It can be, let's say we're talking about AI prompt engineering. So once you learn generative AI, you can become AI prompt engineer. You can become AI compliances manager, obviously generative AI engineer, generative AI product manager, generative AI design specialist, AI architects, and existing AI architects. So these are a new jobs which has originated, and you can be part of an existing jobs as well. So you can be a data scientist, you need a generative AI. Or let's say you want to become AI architect, you need generative AI, or AI researcher, or AI safety manager, or a machine learning engineer, or an MLOps engineer, or any tech professional. Consider that. So every organization, they want to integrate AI in some fashion. You need to know how to work with RAG system, how to do a prompt engineering, right? So how to play with the data. So it can be any software developer, a full stack, front end, back end, a cloud engineer, or any software developer. So yes, they need generative AI for a unique problem statements that you can solve for any different organizations. And let's talk about how does the numbers would look like, right? The income potential for generative AI here, right? So definitely when I'm talking about, let's say an average salary, I'm talking about someone who has let's say a 2 to 3 years of experience, right? So 2 to 3 years of experience according to any MNC standards, right? So an average salary in Bangalore, you can able to see it starts from 46.7 lakhs. Obviously it varies depending on the organization. So, and again, when I'm talking about an average salary across India, it will be around 44.9 lakhs. Let's say if you're looking for an average salary in Pune, it is 43.1 lakh. And and based on your experience range, this salaries could able to triple. I mean, or let's say, depending on what you're getting currently as well, right? And again, a global average is really higher, right? So we're talking about an average salary for generative AI engineer across US, somewhere around obviously 115K dollars uh, per year, right? So, and again, let's say when I'm talking about the AI job vacancy trend, right? So, because every organization has a use case today, right? Because they want to build a simple chat applications to, maybe we are talking about an example of how Policy Bazaar could able to um, solve a problems of picking a best policy, or it can be any kind of a use cases in health sector, finance, banking, e-commerce. Everywhere there's a use case. So, and again, there's a greater need for an AI engineer, someone who can able to understand generative AI and they can build applications for them, right? And now let us talk about how much time you got. So do you think you have all the time in this world? Definitely not. Let's talk about a simple example always I would like to mention. It took 10 years to replace a cameraman and a pilot. So what is this use case? You know that drones is revolutionizing a media industry today. But let's just imagine the world before drones, where a chopper and a cameraman is, taking a huge risk in shooting a movie or a video or a news. And this industry took 10 years to replace. Do you think you have such kind of a time so where you can postpone the things? Never. See, consider that the only industry which is transforming faster is AI, because each and every day there's a new update. Each and every day someone is crashing the market, stock market. You know that DeepSeek just crashed the market few months ago, and we're not just today talking about DeepSeek alone, such kind of a models. Then it's going to be Evolve, and we are talking about AGIs, ASIs, etc. Right? So AI is transforming pretty much faster. That means if you want to get into the race of getting into the AI, you don't have a much time for. I mean, you don't have a much time. You can get into it, and you can able to get started immediately here. Okay, with that, so now let's discuss about so when exactly your program is going to start. Right, the long awaiting. Yes, we are getting started with our new batch of generative AI specialization program. So where you can able to learn building an AI agents to multi AI agents. We are getting starting from 12th of March. Yes. So let's talk about this particular program. Yes, our next batch is going to start from 12th of March. This is a program, and every weekdays, hardly just 2 hours of session every day. That's it. 8:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. In case if you're joining from India, so all our trainings will be happening on IST, 8:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. IST, hardly 2 hours of session every day. So now let's talk about how does this program structure works, right? So yes, this is how the program structure works. So as I mentioned, every weekdays from 8:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. we'll be having a live session. So that is where you're going to learn how to build generative AI applications. So I promise almost 85% of the time that you're going to spend in our program, you'll be busy building projects. I mean, it's going to be completely hands-on, right? That's why people's love us. So then comes every next day. Obviously, you'll be receiving an access to the recordings of a live session that you attend. And even on weekdays, the same weekdays, we'll be having what we call it as debugging sessions. Those are optional to attend. Those are called doubt clearing sessions. Consider that you do whatever I do on my screen. So we build projects. Maybe you stuck somewhere, you have some errors, you couldn't able to fix it. So you join a personalized debugging sessions where you share your screen. I will assist you to fix the problem. Isn't it awesome? Yes, that's how it's going to work. So with that, now let's talk about our program, the Generative AI Specialization Program. As we discussed, this is a program on multi-cloud. So here you will be learning how to build a production grade generative AI applications on AWS, Azure, GCP, not just limited to that, using open source tools as well. So we are looking for somewhere around 100 hours. Yes, otherwise it's a 3 months program. Yes, it's a program for 3 months. We're getting started from 12th of March. We're looking for more than 20, 50 plus live hands-on labs. There are around 25 real-time projects, right? So how you build the real-time end-to-end generative applications and you deploy to the production, right? And one-on-one debugging sessions that I'm talking about, right? So why wait? So go ahead and start registering, because we do have very limited seats. Let's talk about the awesome pricing structure that we do have. Why do I say awesome pricing structure? Yes, we do have some surprises here. Let's discuss that. Okay, so here we do have three different types of pricing structure, because every folks who comes from different domains, basically, right? Every folks has different requirements, what they want to take away from this particular program. So we do have three different plans, and this program is for tightly packed for only 20 peoples in a batch. That's it. Yes, we're not taking more. So we do have three different plans. The first plan is called Advanced Plus. Advanced Plus plan is just starting with, I mean, 54,999 rupees. And we do have what we call it as advanced plan is for 48,999 rupees. And we do have what we call it as basic plan just for 45,999. Okay, wait a minute. So why do I have three different pricing options? What do I pick? What really works out for you? Let's discuss that quickly, right? So we call it as basic, advanced, and advanced plus. Who takes basic plan? So basic plan is for someone who is only looking for upskilling only here. So you can able to attend live sessions every day. You'll get access to the recordings. You will get access to the debugging session and other free resources that we provide. If your intention is only to upskill, just go for basic plan. That really works out for you. Otherwise, if you're looking for a more premium support, a more care, so this is where you would go for advanced or advanced plus plan. So most of the working professionals, they take either advanced or advanced plus plan. Again, everything in a basic is already included in advanced and advanced plus, right? Live sessions, access to the recordings and debugging sessions and free resources. But what is extra in advanced plan? So this is where you get support for resume preparation, 6 months of support, and bonus reattendance. What do you mean by that? So bonus reattendance is an opportunity you get twice the chance to take a batch. So consider that you're joining our 12th of March batch. Even after you completing the 12th of March batch, you'll be automatically getting one more access, the right next batch, maybe consider that we might have a next batch around May. You can take our May batch again for a free of cost. You'll be automatically added, right? So then comes you get resume preparation support. Then comes 6 months of technical job support. Let's discuss in detail what is this resume preparation support or 6 months of job support. Yep, this is where we are really good at, right? Let's discuss quickly what is that. So, when I'm talking about support is a 4 step framework. Pretty much simple. Step number one, resume preparation. Yes, that's a key for you to achieve your goals. What do you mean by that? So consider that maybe you are coming from various different IT background. You might be a software developer, front and back and cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, data scientist. Okay, I can keep on naming it. Okay, perfect. But consider that everyone might have a different set of experience levels as well. So when you want to demonstrate yourself saying that you are a generative AI developer, so this is where we help you in biasing your resume. Any HR checks out your resume, it should say that you are a generative AI engineer. Maybe someone would like to apply for generative AI lead, generative AI architect, specialist kind of a roles here, right? So basically, we will help you in biasing your resumes. Basically, that's a first step. And second step in a framework is optimizing your job portals. It can be LinkedIn, Naukri, GitHub, right? Or Shine, any job portal, just to make sure that okay, you're getting some good quality calls, right, for the interview. Then comes step number three. This is where we play a very, very important role. We call it as JD decoding sessions. What do you mean by that? So consider that you have a good resume, good job portal. No one is going to stop you from getting the interview calls. But the question is, okay, you have an interview call. That doesn't mean you have a job, but still you need to crack it. So how are you going to demonstrate yourself, right? This is where we help you before you go ahead and attend a technical round of interview. Let's assume you have an interview day after tomorrow. You bring in a JD. We sit for a discussion. So what we do, we try to decode that JD. We understand what kind of tools and technologies they're looking forward. So definitely, maybe you have mentioned 2 to 3 years of experience in Gen AI. So how exactly you're going to demonstrate, how you exactly you're going to evaluate. You need to have some stories, isn't it? This is where we help you to narrate the story. So saying that what you have done already in generative AI, what kind of a projects you have built, right? We help you in narrating that story, right? And this is where it really helps you to crack your interview. Then comes step number four, on job support, technical job support. Consider that right now you're in a job, right? You're stuck somewhere. Maybe you need some assistance, you need some decoding, an architecture review, brainstorming, some problem solving help. Yeah, we can help you, right? This is basically a 4 step framework which you get an access with advanced plan. In advanced plan, you get 6 months of support. In advanced plus plan, the topmost plan, you get 1 year of support. That's a difference. When you go to the topmost plan, as I mentioned, the key difference is you get 1 year support, and again the same bonus reattendance. You get twice the chance to take a batch, and one more opportunity here we give. It's called instant access to recordings. So obviously it's a 3 months program. Obviously you don't want to wait for 3 months. So what you can do if you're interested to get started right now in right next minute, yep, so post completion of registration for advanced plus plan, you get access to the previous batch recordings. You don't need to wait for 3 months. You get access to a previous batch recordings. You can access any module, any topic, anytime, and parallel you can start attending the live sessions, right? This is basically an advanced plus plan that I'm talking about. Yep. So with that, if you want to know the pricing in USD, yep, this is how the pricing would look like. So an advanced plus plan would be around $699. That's it. And then when you go for advanced plan, it will be $599. And when you go to basic plan, it's around $549, right? So this is an awesome price, and this is tightly packed with 20 peoples in a batch. That's it. Okay, so next comes obviously the time for surprise, isn't it? Obviously, yes, there's some surprise for you, but yeah, honestly, I'm not going to reveal the surprise. Yes, my team is insisting, but yes, I'm not going to reveal the surprise yet, but I will be revealing the surprise post we discuss about the curriculum. So once we discussed about the curriculum, we'll reveal the surprise. So before we discussing about the surprise, do you remember that we started generating a video by using an AI? Let's have a quick look into that. Let's quickly go ahead and take a look. Do we have a video got generated? Okay, here we go. Wow. So the video got generated. So we have generated a video by using a VO3 model on top of Vertex AI on top of GCP. This model not just generates a video, it also generates an audio. Can we go ahead and listen to this particular video? Right? Let me just go ahead and play it.
These flowers carry blessings.
Then let's take them for the Diwali festival tomorrow.
Perfect. Yeah, so we know this is the power of video generation. With that, now let's get started with discussing about our awesome curriculum that we got. Then we will quickly go ahead. I will reveal the surprise as well. Here we go, folks. Now let's go ahead and quickly discuss about the awesome curriculum that's outside in the market. Yes, we are really proud to say that this is the best curriculum that's outside in the market. So now I will be also sharing this particular PDF after discussion, so you can go ahead and download this particular PDF. This PDF has everything A to Z that you need to know in terms of this particular program. There is a table of content, you can access every details here. So now I'm interested to go for curriculum. Let's go ahead and discuss. Okay, so this entire program has around 12 modules that we'll be covering for next 3 months. So yes, we'll get started with module number one. So module number one is all about introduction to generative AI. So this is a module where I will be introducing to the world of generative AI, to understanding what is top-notch technology that is available for Gen AI today. So this is where we'll be understanding the different types of generative AI technologies, text, image, audio, video, etc. And then comes, yes, very important discussion here, how to improve LLM results, which is nothing but, see, let's say we talked about various different things, prompt engineering, RAG, fine tuning, AI agents, right? But how do you become a good generative AI developer? What do you mean by that? So tomorrow, how do you solve a problem? So do you build AI agents for all the kind of solution? Definitely, that's a bad idea. AI agents are not the hammer for all the kind of solution. When do you pick AI agents? When you pick RAG, when you pick fine tuning, when you do prompt engineering, right? That's what exactly what we'll be learning. And here we'll be also learning about different kinds of RAG, like RAG, Graph RAG, CAG, CAG, etc. And module number two is basically a prompt engineering. This is where we'll be deep diving into prompt engineering. We'll be doing a lot of hands-on projects, understanding, let's say, different prompting techniques like basic prompting, clear and direct, assigning a role, role prompting, for an example, right? And yes, advanced prompting techniques as well. Then comes, yes, building a complex industrial grade project. Yes, we'll be building a complete Gen AI project just by using a prompt engineering. And also we'll be doing a A/B testing to see which prompts works out for your client, which doesn't, right? Then comes module number three, is where we'll be diving deep into generative AI capabilities on a multi-cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP. So yes, before that we'll be deciding which kind of a model that you choose. How do you choose for your Gen AI application, right? So there are various different model providers like AI 21 Labs, Amazon, Anthropic, Cohere, right? OpenAI, for an example, Gemini. So how do you pick the best model? So then comes, we'll be exploring the different tools on every cloud. So as we discussed, AWS has Bedrock. We'll be exploring the Bedrock capabilities, right? So what are the different tools Bedrock offers? Are discussing about other cloud assistants like Amazon Q. Exploring Google Cloud for generative AI capabilities. This is where we'll be exploring Google AI Studio and Vertex AI for building a production grade and generative AI applications, and talking about agent building tools on top of Vertex AI, right? Then comes exploring Azure for generative AI. They call it as Azure AI Foundry, right? How to work with Azure AI Foundry, how to create a projects over there, right? Hubs, and what is a service, for an example. And yes, then comes, we'll be getting started with module number four, right? So module number four is basically what we're talking about, text generation on top of AWS, Azure, and GCP, right? So this is where we'll be getting started with building more than one projects in terms of by using an LLM. So you can see there are different projects in terms of text generation, code generation, text summarization, for an example, and multi-clouds. And then comes, we'll be getting started with Azure AI Foundry for text generation. So we'll be using and deploying different models on top of Azure AI Foundry. It can be FIFO model, OpenAI models, how do you deploy and how to build generative applications. And then comes, here we'll be exploring about Google AI Studio or a Vertex AI for getting started with building Gen AI applications. We'll be building a real-time food recommendation apps, are using different APIs of Gemini's. We'll be going ahead and playing with that. So then comes module number five. So we'll be getting started with advanced RAG and even a document processing, right? So this is where we'll be building at least one project on every cloud based on a RAG. Yes, we'll be deploying a RAG based applications on top of Amazon Bedrock, on top of Azure AI Foundry, as well as on top of Vertex here. Not just a cloud, right? So yes, this is where we'll be getting started with open source tools like LangChains, diving deep into understanding LangChains for RAG. And yes, we'll be building one end-to-end project deploying LangChains with RAG. So then comes, yes, Llama Index, for an example, diving deep into Llama Index and also building a project. And then comes understanding different vector databases in depth and understanding different databases like Facebook AI similarity search, Pinecone, or Quadrant, etc. Right? And then comes understanding, let's say, advanced vector database operations and chunking strategies, agentic RAG, not just agents. Let's say we are talking about understanding how to build agentic RAG applications as well. So then comes, we are talking about module number six, Yes, this is where we'll be heading towards image and video generation as well as multi models, right? Getting started with multi models. So this is where we'll be getting started with using different tools for how to generate a production grade images, are using Gemini for using these imagine models. Let's say you know that Nano Banana, right? How to use Nano Banana APIs for generating an images, are using Azure AI Foundry, DALI. For video generation, yes, today we do have a lot of options using this VO 3 3.1 as the latest model. And let's say on top of AWS, we do have Amazon Noah models for video generation, and also playing with multi-model processing, like playing with multi-model embedding, right? So, and other advanced multi-model applications. Then comes module number 7 is where we will be talking about model customization and fine tuning. So this is where we discuss the fine tuning, and one project will be built on fine tuning any one of the LLM that's outside in the market. So obviously when to do fine tuning, what could be the cost benefit analysis on top of it. Yes, so this is where we'll be fine tuning a model on top of Azure AI Foundry. Yes, we'll be directly fine tuning a GPT model. We'll pick any one of a GPT model outside in the market, and we'll be also talking about other fine tuning technique like PFT, right? Other techniques. So advanced fine tuning techniques, model quantization, otherwise putting in a very simple way, model optimization techniques. Okay, then comes the long awaiting module number 8, agentic AI and workflows. So this is where a specific module completely dedicated for building an AI agents. We spend a lot of time here, right? So we'll be getting started with AI agents, fundamentals, understanding the types of different AI agents, right? Then comes on every cloud. Yes, every cloud will be building an AI agent applications. We'll be getting started with Amazon Bedrock. Amazon Bedrock has their own frameworks, own SDKs for building an AI agents. And then comes also understanding multi-agent support with LangGraph, not just a single agent. We want to build a multi-agent, right? So we'll be using LangGraph. We will see how we can able to build a completely open source AI agent, multi AI agent applications. I mean projects, right? Then comes, let's say we're talking about Azure for AI agent. This is where we'll be exploring Azure Foundry for building an end-to-end AI agents, and also configuring a different tools to be part of that AI agents. Then getting started with Google AI Studio, also exploring Vertex AI capabilities for building an end-to-end AI agents, also deploying those agents on top of Vertex AI as well. So Vertex, I mean, when I'm talking about GCP got their own tools for developing an agent. They call it as ADK, agent development kit. How do we get started with agent development kit, and how do we build an agent and deploy it, right? So then comes, obviously we want to build multi agents. We talked about LangGraph. Not just that, we will be also covering A to A, which stands for agent to agent. We'll see how we can able to build multi agent applications. So if you remember that the internet is talking about Cloud Code or Cloud Cowork is powered by multi agent frameworks. So then comes MCP, model context protocol. We'll be also exploring how to use MCP. MCP is basically a tool provider for your agents. We'll be using MCP, and one project will be built. And then comes one production ready agent frameworks and complete end to end. Just remember that we are talking about operations plus deployment, integrating CI CD, DevOps practices, building your applications and deploying it to containers, for an example, monitoring that applications in a production, right? Yes, the complete end-to-end taste, right? How it works in your organizations, and exploring other agentic frameworks applications. Then comes module number 9 is the important module, because just by building generative applications does not makes you a generative AI developer. So obviously making sure that monitoring the performance and monitoring and the performance evaluation of a Gen AI applications that you build is really important. So this is where we'll be getting started with observability and monitoring. We'll be building a different projects on different clouds to understand how to perform monitoring, and how do you evaluate your Gen AI applications. We'll be also exploring other open source tools like Evidently AI or ML Flow, how to use those tools for let's say evaluation. And again, talking about different kind of evaluation techniques like BLUE, GLUE, Rogue, Meteor. Looks fancy, right? But we'll discuss in detail. So then comes, how do you evaluate your AI agents, or how do you evaluate a RAG? How do you know this RAG works and doesn't work? So then comes module number 10 is basically we're talking about responsible AI and ethics. We talked about the importance of responsible AI. So in this module, we will be in a real time, we'll be implementing a responsible AI services, a guardrails to your GenAI application that you built. Module number 11, yes, again, what do I say? The important module. Just by building a generative AI applications doesn't makes you a generative AI developer until unless you don't know how to deploy it to the production. So this is where we'll talking about production deployment and APIs. We'll be exploring, okay, what is the CI/CD? How you can use CI/CD practices like GitHub or code build or code pipelines on top of AWS to deploy the generative applications. Are talking about containers and Dockers. Yes, we'll be talking about containers, how you can Dockerize your GenAI applications and how to deploy it. We'll be talking about Docker Compass. How do you deploy multi-container GenAI applications? Then comes cloud deployment. See, AWS, Azure, GCP, they have their own tools for deploying your GenAI applications. It can be container solutions, Kubernetes solutions using API gateways, serverless deployment platforms like Lambda or functions in Azure, functions in GCP. And also we'll be building a projects with that. And also as we're talking about serverless deployment with project. Then comes Kubernetes, understanding Kubernetes and deploying your projects on top of Kubernetes. It can be on premises, it can be cloud, etc. Then comes talking about MLOps and for LLMs, talking about the operations side of fine tuning and deploying your large language models. Then comes module number 12. Module number 12 is a self-paced videos. It is not covered under a live session, folks. Module number 12 will be sharing the pre-recorded videos. We don't have live session for module number 12. So here we'll be exploring other tools. Obviously, everything that we have learned on the above modules will be also applied here. So AI operations with MLOps and other Gen AI tools. So here you will be getting started with the operation side of delivering a data science models. Otherwise, what you're talking about, your actual fine-tuned models that I'm talking about, right? So you'll be exploring what is MLOps. You'll be getting started with understanding CI/CD, SageMaker, right? And again, so here you'll be building two different projects, understanding CI/CD. Then comes building an end-to-end machine learning pipelines. And if I scroll down further, so here we'll be exploring other tools for document processing. Or let's say we'll be also talking about other open source tools for Langsmith for monitoring. And then comes the most important and interesting tools that we will be exploring throughout this particular program, AI powered development tools, right? So obviously today we are talking about, let's say the code IDs like Cursor, right? Which is actually literally has a power of replacing every developers in the market. So yes, here I will be showing how to get started with Cursor, and Google has something called Google Anti-Gravity. Not just that, we'll be also exploring about Windsurf, Replit, and the talk of a town again. Let's say we're talking about Cloud Code and Co-work, how to get started with Cloud Code and Co-work. Yes, we'll be also getting started with that. So this is about the awesome curriculum. Don't wait. We do have very limited seats. Seats are filled. That's it. We are not going to take any more participants more. So it's 20 seats only. So you can find other details in the same curriculum. If you scroll down further, so here you can see details of what projects that we're going to build throughout this particular program. So you can go ahead and read about each and every projects. And if you scroll down further, you could able to see the tools that we're going to master throughout this particular program, skills that we're going to master. These are the skills that you can possibly add it on your resumes. And if you scroll down further here, you can able to go ahead and access the same program fee that we discussed for INR and USD. And if you scroll down further, you can get a details of what we have in a plan in detail, FAQs. And then very importantly, definitely, I would definitely ask you folks to go ahead and listen to the glimpse of our happy participants, people who have taken other AI programs in our market. I mean, so obviously we want to make some difference and we want to be different in this particular industry, right? So go ahead and listen to this testimonials. Our participants does talks about our program, why they really feel happy, right? After taking this particular program. So we have seen people's ranging from minimal experience to maximum experience. We have seen people's getting placed in lead positions in AI industries. It can be MLOps, it can be generative AI. So you can take a look into all the testimonials, the feedbacks that has been shared, people who share their appreciations in a LinkedIn with the certificates. So go ahead and take a look. So this is the program for someone who want to become the actual generative AI engineers for you to work in production. So this is about the generative AI specialization program. And again, we do have very limited seats. Please go ahead and sign up before the seats are getting filled. Okay, so without wasting much of a time, so now let me just go ahead and reveal the surprise which has been awaited for a long time. So what do you mean by surprises? So I mean, so this surprises are surprises because surprises never comes every time. So obviously, this is kind of a ritual that we do every new batch that we conduct. So for the first only five registrations, we give this surprises, which is nothing but appreciating the amount of time that you're dedicated for this particular program. See, you know that most of the folks would be interested in going for either advanced plan or advanced plus plan. So because they get twice the chance to take a batch, right? And also they get the support. So in that scenario, right? So are you someone who is looking for either advanced plan or advanced plus plan? This is what you need to do. So if you're interested in advanced plan. So don't register for advanced plan, which is costing around 48,999. You can register for advanced plan just by registering for basic plans. All you need to do, you go ahead and register for basic plan, which is costing around 45,999, and we will be upgrading you to advanced plan, right? And again, this is strictly for only for 5 seats left only. I mean, for first 5 registrations only, and we are going to give this offers till 19th of February only, because these seats are going to fill in pretty much faster, right? And again, let's say if you're someone who's looking for topmost plan, which we're talking about advanced plus plan, which is costing around 54,999, don't register for advanced plus plan. Simply go ahead and register for advanced plan, which is costing around 48,999. We will be upgrading you to advanced plus plan. So you'll be saving around 6,000 rupees on a registration discounts. And this is only for 5 seats together with advanced or advanced plus plan. I'm talking about only 5 seats, and you get offers till 19th of February only. After that, we don't have this particular offers. Okay, and with that, so you can go ahead and register for with your credit card, debit card. So we do have EMI starting from 1,700 rupees. So go ahead and get started. So before we get sold out, if you have any questions right now, I'm going to open a session for a Q&A. So go ahead and ask your questions. I will also share you again the registration links. The first link will be the registration link where you can go ahead and proceed with registration. Second link, you can go ahead and download the curriculum. So by clicking on the button, you can go ahead and download the curriculum. And the third link where I will be sharing the free ebooks as I promised. So go ahead and get started. Now you can go ahead and ask me a million questions, not 1 million questions. Now let me just start answering that, folks. Okay, thank you.